in front of like a very crowded beach. He just picks her up and body slams her.
Oh
and
my
just
gosh.
batters her, and everybody's screaming for the police. And then so he runs out into the Gulf, looking around. I'm like, hey, this guy just pulled up his jet ski there. I was like, can I borrow that? He's like, have at it.
You're listening to 56, a Pinellas County Sheriff's Office podcast. I'm Ricky Butler with Laura Sullivan and Ashley Cooley. We are excited to have Lieutenant Matt Thornton with us in the 56 studio. He is the Lieutenant over Youth Education and Administrative Services. He's been with the agency almost 20 years, which is pretty crazy because I'm at that age where I start looking at people's hire dates. I'm like, wait a minute. So almost 20 years for Lieutenant Thornton. And over
That's
his...
such a youthful face after all that time.
It is. Yeah, you can't even tell. It's a baby face. But a lot of time in his career, though, spent dealing with the youths, as we like to call them, so which is fitting for his current assignments. We look forward to getting into all that and then some on this episode. But first, Ashley has a question.
Okay.
You can remove one song from existence forever. What is it? This is instantaneous for me.
Just have to think a long
Ashley,
time.
if it's instantaneous for you,
Yeah.
like, what is it?
We Are the Champions.
Wow.
I hate that one.
Hate
Wow.
that song with every fiber of my being.
Wow.
And I love Queen. Hate that song.
Hate that song.
Hate that song. I think it was just really overplayed when Mighty Ducks came out, and it just became like personal. I have a second one too.
You know, I really don't like, I love Pink Floyd, but I really hate Money.
Really?
If that comes on, I'll turn it off every single time. I wish they would play a bigger selection of Pink Floyd on the radio,
love
but
that
that
song.
comes up pretty often.
There's like, I just can't think of a single song I'm like off, but I don't know. I have a good roster of things I like, but things I just don't like. I gotta think about this. Matt, you got anything?
I'm with you. I'm
Yeah.
trying to think of something that I don't like that I don't listen to.
Because I don't listen to
what
things
I don't listen to
like,
it.
so
I mean,
it's
there's tons of stuff.
it's
I
a-
would-
Yeah, what about like
wouldn't care.
certain Christmas songs or something? Because some of those are forced on you or stuff that they play in.
That's a good.
Yeah.
That's a good thought.
Oh yes.
Okay.
Oh yes.
Ooh, I also want to say the Happy Birthday song.
Just that in
It's
general.
awful.
I did used
It's
to like
awful.
cry when I was a kid, and they would sing Happy Birthday. I hated it. But no, you know what? I'll say All I Want for Christmas Is You. I hate that song.
Oh.
I hate that song. I hate it. It's not that good, and I hate it.
'Cause I kind of like that song. I kind of like that Christmas song, or like
See?
Yeah, I don't hate that song.
Removed from total existence.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, that
just-
feels cruel.
Just gone.
Yeah,
Like
forever.
before
It is
artists-
extreme.
like some things that had some kind
I mean,
of
that's how
cultural
these questions
at the
are. They all or
time.
nothing.
I know.
Actually, you know what? Because I was forced to listen to this from my wife, so a lot of the Backstreet Boys Christmas.
Oh, that's specific.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sure I had that album.
So
Yeah.
any of them. Any of them.
Yeah, any of them could go.
Yeah. All right. That's not.
All right.
I mean, that's like a cover of a song, but I think
It counts.
it counts.
It counts.
Counts
Yeah,
close
that
enough.
works for
That
me.
recording.
Yeah,
Okay.
of course.
Just wipe out the entire album.
Yeah.
Yeah, good enough.
Done. All right. So, Pinellas County native, grew up here,
Yes.
and what did you want to be when you grew up initially?
I wanted to be a veterinarian.
All right.
Yeah, and I went through Seminole schools, and went to, it's called Tech High now, but back then it was like the VOED Center. And yeah, I went through all 5 levels of veterinary technology. I traveled to the college and
Like in high school.
in high school, yeah.
Very
So
cool.
I got to do. So I went to Seminole High School, but I got bused over to just right down the street to the vocational school, and that was supposed to be a start. And there was they were building at the time the St. Pete College veterinary program, and then I went to UF and checked out theirs, and that's what I wanted to do.
But then just
What changed your mind?
yeah.
I started looking at the length of time for schooling and all that stuff. I'm like, yeah, this seems great until you have to do it. So yeah, that's where things changed.
And you liked animals and stuff. Like
Yeah,
that was
I always
kind of-
liked animals. You know,
Do you have animals growing up?
yeah.
Anything crazy?
I had like, I don't know. One time I think I had 5 or 6 snakes in my room.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean,
Wild-
I had a pig
wild
growing
caught
up.
or,
yeah, most of
yeah.
them were all wild caught. I used to go
Yeah.
out in the early morning with friends and go and catch snakes. Try to pick up every log I could find and
I love turning over logs.
turn
That's
over
one of the
logs. See
best
if you can
things
find
of
bugs,
life.
snakes. Yeah, go see what you can find.
Okay.
How about no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or not.
More logs for us.
But you have Laura's attention.
Yeah. Yep.
And then and then normal. You had a pig. What kind of pig?
I had a pig. It was it was as a kid, had a potbelly pig. It was supposed to be a tiny, like a miniature, but it wasn't. It was the typical, you buy a piglet. And then so by the time it got to be about 100 and something pounds, actually took it to the same place, that Ag's farm, and donated it to them.
Nice.
They kept it as a pet for a long time.
Nice.
But yeah, it outgrew what it's advertised.
What it was supposed to.
Yeah.
I feel like that happens a lot.
It does happen a lot.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily know or people market them as small
Right.
pigs, and they're, potbelly pigs can vary in range. Not all of them, most of them don't stay small.
Right. So you're high school, like junior, senior when you decide?
Yeah, I did it through. So I started first thing in 9th grade, and I did, so it was 2.5 years. So probably about the end of 10th or maybe the beginning of 11th going into the final level of that, which was 5 levels. So it was each a half semester. And I'm like,
Not so much.
I don't think I'm going to do this.
Yeah. But kudos though for like picking something and working toward it, because
Yeah.
I think, for all of the youths that listen, it is cool to have those opportunities in high school to
Right.
explore different
yeah.
things. Or it's
Totally.
better. I mean, you could have gotten out of high school and run 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction and wasted all that time, but you figured it out on the front end.
That's right. Yeah. Could have been.
So did you go immediately from vet to law enforcement, or what happened in between?
Yeah. So basically, crazy story, but I saw the movie Super Troopers.
Of all the cop movies, that one.
Like that's the one.
That's the one. That's the one.
I don't know that that's what they were going for with that movie.
I don't think it was a recruiting video,
Yeah.
but for me,
Like the Top Gun of law enforcement.
Yeah.
I feel like it shows the strong sense of camaraderie among law enforcement.
that's
and,
what, hey, you're selling
the
it.
teamwork.
I was
and,
like, is this real? And I'm like,
I'm going to find out.
I'm gonna find out. Yeah.
If
And was-
Doofy can make it, I mean,
Right?
there's hope for everyone, right?
Yeah. So then I started,
and was it as fun as you?
absolutely.
So then you got into the cadets and stuff, right?
Yep. So I got into the cadet program that I currently supervise. Got to learn statutes, do the different the different aspects of what's entailed to start law enforcement, and I just shifting from the funny slapstick movie to the real world was like, this is really seemingly a good job, and I can start. It doesn't require necessarily a lot of schooling or anything really besides having good moral character and the willingness to be able to do this and help people out. Cliche, but yeah, got into it and actually took it seriously, and decided that's what I was going to do.
So then you got to be, again, junior, senior-ish, high
Yep.
school, you start cadets.
Yep.
And then from there on, it was like full speed ahead, let's go.
Full speed ahead. Let's go.
And then after high school, what'd you get into?
Yeah,
then?
so I was in high school and I was a senior getting ready to graduate. I knew I wanted to do this. And I go, what do I do? What's the next step? So I start looking at St. Pete College so I could stay locally. And they said, oh, we offer a degree program. It's an associate's in science in law enforcement, and you get to go through 2 years of school, but they also incorporate an academy. And so I was like, that's good. I'll do that. It'll take 2 years. And then, so I go travel for the summer, get ready to go start about a week before. They call us in to the college and they say, hey, none of you guys, we're canceling this program. We don't offer it anymore.
Oh,
And I'm like, bummer. But they said, but you don't necessarily meet the prerequisites for the academy itself, but we're going to grandfather everybody that was signed up for this program to take an academy.
There you go.
I was like, well, that's a lot sooner than I ever thought. So I figured I could push it down the road a couple years. So I ended up taking the academy at 18 years old, which you have to be
Right.
You have to be 19 to even state statute wise to even do that, and to work at the sheriff's office, which I always wanted to work at the sheriff's office. I grew up in the area where the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office patrolled, and I got to know some of the people, and I just liked the agency and the culture surrounding it. So I ended up graduating the academy, taking the test, and I took the test right before my birthday, but I had applied, and they said, you're not old enough to work here, but you can go to the jail if you'd like, and we'll call you on your birthday. And I was like, so okay. And they did. They called me on my 19th birthday to start the process.
So, but you'd gone through the law enforcement academy.
I went to the law enforcement academy.
Okay,
So they said,
Oh.
that's gonna. So I wasn't certified to work in the jail, so they have to put me through a 5-week transition. Which luckily at the time the economy was getting, it was on shaky ground at the time. But then that was before the major fallout
Sure.
of the 2008 crash. But yeah, so I was able to get in, and they steered me to the jail and then put me through an in-house 5-week transition with several other people that actually were in my academy class that did the same route. And they gave us the current sheriff now, who's the chief deputy. He basically gave us the deal that, hey, you hold up your end of the bargain, do a good job, we'll get you out in a couple of years.
And get you onto the road.
Get you onto the road. It was nothing was guaranteed, but
Sure.
it was strictly, hey, you guys do this now.
This is the intent.
Yeah, this is the intent. And then during that time, right after that, I think the class after me they got laid off due to just extreme,
Budget cuts
budget
and all that
cuts.
stuff, yeah.
It was unfortunate, but I made the cut, so I stayed here in the jail, and the agency held up their end of the deal and got me out in about 2.5 years.
Was everyone telling you when you went into the
Oh,
jail?
yeah.
They're never going to let you go to the
You're not
road.
going to be able to get out of here. This is you're here. We're always understaffed. We're always looking for people. So yeah, there's a lot of naysayers, and I just kept going. And I think I waited till 2 years to the day, and I put a memo. And there was no posting or anything, and they're like, "This is kind of uncustomary." I was like, "I still want to do it. I'm just going to put in and see what happens."
Worst I can say is no.
Yeah, the worst I can say is no. And I didn't hear anything for a little while, and I'm like, "There's no posting." Being new, I didn't really understand how things work or transfers. I just know, hey, I feel like I'm 21 now.
Ready to
I can
go.
do
Let's
this.
go, yeah.
So it was a short time later. They say, "You still interested?" I'm like, "Absolutely." So I went through started going through the process, and
So you would have gone directly into like law enforcement in-house at that point.
Yeah, because you
Because
took
you'd
the
already
academy.
done the-
You're
Yeah,
certified.
I didn't have to do anything. It was
Yeah.
straight up going through, and luckily they had enough transitioning people, so they put us into an in-house class. Yeah,
And then are you still technically dual certified?
I'm dual certified. Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
So let's go back to the jail though, because I know everybody else. We've talked to a handful of folks here on the podcast, and and people that started in the jail.
Yeah.
and they really said that really set the tone and made them a better deputy on the better law enforcement deputy on the streets.
Yeah.
Was that your experience?
100%.
Yeah.
At the time, I'm like, this isn't really what I do. This is not my dream job at all. But it was just invaluable experience, and the way you talk to people, having to actually kind of coexist with the life that they have to live, that they're required to, based on their punishment of being confined there. You can make your days really good or really bad, and most people, you end up finding they just want to be treated fairly, and you just be fair, firm, and consistent with them, same as anybody wants in life, and it made your day better too.
So because if you're on the road, obviously your interaction with the soon-to-be inmate is a lot shorter, right? When you arrest
Very short.
somebody, so it kind of puts you in a position where you have to coexist, like you said. I mean, work with them.
Yeah, if you've never done it, you can take these people. They might be, belligerent or whatever. You can just say whatever. You can ignore them for your ride to the jail, your paperwork, and then say see you later. But if somebody's belligerent there, you're stuck with them. You have to figure out how to, make the best of everybody's situation. Yours included.
Sure. Do you have any good examples or stories you think back to trying to deal with folks? 'Cause it is interesting because besides the fact that you're obviously very young,
Yeah.
it does teach you how to talk to people. But what kind of experiences did you have?
Yeah, I think mine's different than a lot of people's because I was probably younger than most of the inmates. I mean, by far younger than most. And I even had some of these inmates, they'd call me Deputy Jit, which was like it was a term in jail they use typically for a young person. And they, it would be like they're like, how old are you? They're like, how are you even here? So
Right.
it'd be I know that we hire that young sometimes, but I looked young. I was young. So it was, and they're not, these people are worldly people. And so they know what time is. So it was an extra tough, learning like how to, because they all try to manipulate you.
Sure.
Like the whole thing's about about trying to manipulate, get whatever's best for them. And you just have to, so coming into that thing where I'm dealing with, Seminole schools and basically not very limited adversity. And you go into a situation like that where there's criminals, like real criminals in there. And you're like, wow, this is a wake up call. But I quickly learned how to navigate that and just had a reputation around there as being fair. It's like saying, I'm not going to do anything I'm not supposed to do. And I'm going to hold up my end of the bargain, but you hold up yours, your day's going to be easy.
Right.
So I found that was rewarding, and definitely you had to learn to de-escalate situations because you're stuck with them. They're behind bars. You can't go and take them anywhere else. You're there with them. The most you can do is sometimes there's like prostrate chairs and stuff like that, but that's anomalies. Most of the time you're dealing with the population. They're in a single cell. What are they going to do besides make your day?
Right. Terrible.
Yeah, terrible.
Yeah.
You had a nickname, right?
Yeah, they would call me the Inmate Whisperer. That's what my sergeant at the time.
Oh wow.
That's what they had told me, and they would call me out of different pods because I should preface this by I went to a spot where I was dealing with a lot of it was the healthcare building when they first opened. I went in there and was the original group to open up that building.
Okay.
In fact, you were there before it even had
I was
inmates.
there before it had inmates,
like a dry run with
got to do a dry run with no inmates, and it was perfectly clean. It was weird. You could lay on the bunks or whatever you wanted to do, and everything was perfect. I wouldn't do that anymore.
Right.
But yeah, it was. So I got to do a dry run, got to learn the in and outs, and you got to see like a state of the art jail, which was cool. Watching it from being built, going through the training, and then saying, "Yeah, I'll volunteer. I'll go to the new building, learn." Because a lot of people in this line of work don't like change. They like what they know. They like their routine, and
Right.
they like. But I'm always the opposite. I like taking the opportunity to get out of my comfort zone and do something different.
Right.
So I'm like, sure, sign me up. I'll go over there and learning the control room is. All button pushes now, and everything's controlled from a central like brain. It's really cool. It's really at the time, especially, it was like, wow, that's cool. So working the psych pods was on the second floor. It was all psych. It was psych inmates, and then they had some negative pressure rooms for like isolation, but mostly the
negative pressure, like if they
or
were
positive
sick
pressure,
and
whatever they
keep-
call it. It's keeps
keeps the
circles
air
circulating.
out.
Circles
Okay.
the air out.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So it makes it so if you have TB or something like that, you can
Okay.
be isolated. So that was an interesting side of it too. But then there's some suicide risk pods, and then there's general psych single cell, and that was where the majority of people that were very, very interesting. So yeah, I'd go from different. No matter where I worked, the sergeant at the time, it was Sergeant Perez Ford. She would always call me up, and she'd be like, "Hey, can you come down here and try? This guy's nuts." And I'm like, what is it saying about me? I mean, So yeah, I'd go down there and be able to, and I'd usually develop the good rapport with the people and figured out what made them kind of keep going with life, because a lot of them are just have such severe mental issues, and if they get in there, and a lot of them, it's amazing how well like the nursing staff does there, and they can get them like somebody came off the streets that's unmedicated, they get in there, get to see a psychiatrist, and actually get medicated. It's amazing how well they can turn around, but a lot of them they're a lot of petty criminals, and they end up there because of their stance and just in life they end up getting minor crimes, thefts, and disorderly stuff that they're not necessarily is in their total control, but they get released out and in. So when you see them again, it's like, welcome back. And then a couple days in, you're like, sometimes they get medicated. You're like, wow, you actually can,
Function and
talk.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was pretty good at, because I learned quickly that if you made it hard for them and made it harder than necessary for their life, they could make your day a lot harder, whether it's stuffing rags in their toilet and flushing their cell and trying to beat you with the cut to the water cutoffs, and they can flood the whole room if you're not quick enough.
Oh yeah,
they're just flushing it. Yeah, there was one guy, he thought he was real slick, and he kept flooding his cell, and he'd just start kicking. He'd break stuff in his cell all the time. So actually, I have to check the record to see if it's true, but I think when we first got tasers, I was the first one to be able to tase somebody through the food trap.
Oh,
From the guy who was banging. Yeah.
Oh,
So
jeez.
so the guy was he was donkey kicking the door, trying to.
Wow.
He's just real strong DOC return, like Department of Corrections, pretty much a de facto life sentence back and forth between his. But
so nothing to lose.
Nothing
for
to
him.
lose, and
Yeah.
he would play some. That's another story. Some people they try to pretend they have psychiatric issues to end up away from other people, whether they're scared.
I feel like I would do that if I was
Yeah,
in
you
jail.
that's
yeah,
really.
I would like to have my own private
So
room.
that sounds
and-
like a good plan.
Some of them learn the hard way. If you say too much psychiatric issues, you end up in like a paper gown. So that's not.
no.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was.
What's
that
the
was
right
too
balance?
far.
How,
Yeah, you don't wanna-
how much do I have to be?
you gotta get a status that you're not on suicide risk. Somewhere
Okay.
below, somewhere not quite
I
that
love
much.
life.
What if you
But my
just
life
like
is
dance
crazy.
Yeah,
all the
yeah,
time?
yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
just dance,
Yeah.
and maybe that's
Happy
enough to be like
crazy.
something's up.
Yeah.
Enough that there's probably some trick in there, but yeah, it was one like that, and the guy was he thought, because he didn't know he's returned from DOC, he didn't know about tasers. Nobody really did, and so he dunked his T-shirt into the toilet, and he filled it with, it was either the toilet or sink, but he makes it completely wet, and he wraps it around his face because he thinks, you know what, I destroy property, I get pepper, I get
Oh,
maced
the
or
gas
pepper
is
sprayed.
coming.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. So he makes himself a makeshift mask, and the water supposedly separates it catches some of the particles.
Sure.
So he can live in his thing for a little bit till he gets put in the
Right.
into the chair or whatever. This time, no, he's all wrapped up, he's banging and doing all stuff, and then he didn't know what hit him. He just went fell down and they're right through the trap, and he's like, whoa. And that he was at all that. It was quite interesting.
Can you imagine those first few months when tasers were brand
Yeah,
new?
like
and
what
when
the
word
heck is
started
this
going
thing?
around on the street, what would happen?
Yeah.
He learned a new trick that day about destroying everything.
Yeah.
So he got to learn.
Wow.
So how did you make it? Like, I know you said you would just make things fair, but like how are you the whisperer? What were you?
It was more about just figuring out what's going on with them and figuring out because a lot of times there's a perceived grievance or a perceived issue, and it might be something in their mind, but and if you can iron that out, there's just one guy, he liked to act like a gerbil, basically. He would like to just a little bit of paper to put on the floor, and he'd like to lay in his little paper. And there's one other guy he would
Laura, I got an idea for you.
oh yeah hey, that might
Maybe a ferret.
Yeah, I could.
Yeah,
I like a little nest myself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Put some
Yeah,
tubes
something
in there
that-
for her to run through.
yeah,
So
he
just letting him do
water
that.
So,
bottles
yeah,
of
like
lick on the side.
Yeah, it's not. What's he doing that's harmful, right?
Right.
It's like sometimes that's an extreme. There's one guy that just like a flashlight made him calm down. It was like just a little bit of flashlight on the wall.
Okay.
It was weird. It was weird stuff that you'd have to kind of, and usually, and 99% of the time, it's just talking to him, figuring out what's going on, saying, "Hey, will you do this for me?" Like, "Hey,
Yeah.
you're making these people's day hard. Can you do me a favor and you buy yourself 8 or 10 and 12 hours?" So, yeah, basically.
Okay.
All right. So, and of course, all that stuff translates well onto the road eventually. So
Yeah.
let's go back to, you get your memo in, like, all right, you still interested? You go through it. And how was that? Like, what were some of the major differences? Or did you kind of know what to expect, having been in the Explorers and Cadets and whatnot?
No, I mean, you think you know until you go out there and you're like, this is, the beginning part is fun. You get to go through an in-house training program where you learn defensive tactics, shooting. You get a good refresher, and you get the sheriff's office way of doing things, and you get more of a culture of hey, this is what we expect in patrol. So that part's real fun. But then you actually get out into the car, and you're like, oh, you realize that you don't know everything you thought you did, and you're like, okay, this is let's go, because nothing's like somebody grading you from the passenger seat all the time.
Yeah.
And watching your every move. I'm like, good thing they're not grading me right this second, you know?
Right.
I mean, really, if you think about it, you're being constantly evaluated.
Oh yeah.
Which is
there's
good.
a whole checklist.
There's
of
a whole
like
checklist,
how,
yeah.
like 30, 40, 50, bunch of different criteria,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, there's a bunch of criteria, and you have a seasoned deputy typically riding with you, and they are just critiquing
Yeah.
your every
Their
move.
whole job is to
Their
find
whole
fault
job
with
is
you.
is to
Yeah.
find fault, and I mean, put the positives and everything, but you're like, everything you do, you're looking over your shoulder, you're like, was that good?
What do you think?
What do you think?
Yeah. That's like what, 10, 12 weeks?
Yeah,
Something like that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Was it, not that it would, because it's a totally different job, but like, was it
Yeah,
shortened at all for you?
No,
or-
I didn't.
yeah.
Mine was just, I think it was 12 weeks at the time at least. And yeah, it was, it went on. I did the whole thing. And because it really is a different job. I mean, you're still a deputy, but you have a whole nother set of rules, paperwork, everything else that's completely different. So yeah, so I went to full time, and it was eye opening. And by the time you get a few, there's 4 phases. So by the time you get one, you're like, I don't know what's going on. You're like, you could talk to people. If you came from the jail, you have a benefit from. I had a benefit of knowledge of some of the people. From the inmate, the ones that you've seen them for years. They've come and go.
Inmates.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah,
so wow, you're seeing them on the other side.
Yeah, you're seeing them between stays a lot of times. And so yeah, you get to. I had one time where it was where my FTO had a fingerprint scanner. That was not yet. It was a facial rec. So it was like the original digital cameras. You went out there, and we had the internal program. And so one of the other agencies asked for a facial rec for a guy, and they said, "This is what he's saying he is." And I go, so my field training officer at the time, he's like, "Yeah, I have the system and I have the camera to do it." So we go over there and I go, no, that's this guy. I identified him before. We didn't need it. They're like, really? They're like, yeah. And I was like, I can remember faces. I might not necessarily remember exactly, but I'll figure it out. So yeah, it was like you got to know the inmate population, the ones that are in and out.
Frequent flyers.
Yeah, frequent flyers. Yeah,
You'll run into them again.
Yeah, you'll run into them again. So
Does it give you a different sense of compassion or empathy, having seen like the other half of their lives instead of just, the 20 minutes of, okay, he did a crime, he's being belligerent now I'm done with him.
absolutely,
You knew the other. All
I
the
think
rest,
100%.
all the
You can see the
bookends.
progression. You can see, and it's sad because a lot of these people don't belong in jail. That's 100%. I think it just they need more help. As a whole, the country, everybody, there needs more opportunity to help these folks that are ended up criminalized for behavior that shouldn't be criminal, but it just turns into criminal behavior because the lack of necessary resources to help them.
Yeah.
So out there, the dynamic is a little bit different because I would think, in the jail, you got people all over the place. But then kind of back to your point of like, okay, like let's figure this out. Like you have to be kind of more independent out there.
Yeah. You don't have. We have luck. We're fortunate. We have backup. Our areas are dense, so you have backup here. That's relatively quick. You're not out in the middle of nowhere, but you don't have somebody that can necessarily help you right within a second. So yeah, and you have to, and you're expected to do your job, be able to handle your existence with help too, but going out there and actually understanding all the laws, all the different things, the nuances of coming out to patrol and figuring out, hey, it's on you. Now you're taking these people to jail. You're signing your name on an affidavit and swearing to this probable cause. So it's different.
Definitely like the other side of the coin. And then so you end up becoming an FTO yourself.
Yes. Yep. I did so first I just threw my name in the hat for doing alternate FTO. And after years of just learning the job yourself, because really once you get out of FTO and you're like, I know what I'm doing, and then you realize again that you don't know what you're doing. You're sitting there with an empty passenger seat, and you're like, oh, that guy that I was watching me all the time, that was kind of a security blanket. And you're like, oh, now, and because I had one guy in my class, he ended up just the first day he couldn't eat. He's like, I went to lunch with him. He couldn't eat. He's like, I want to go back.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't want to do this anymore.
But better he
so
realized
he was
that soon. Yeah.
He was from detention with you?
Yeah. And he just said, nope, this is not for me. Like once whatever. I mean, just didn't give it any more opportunity, but he just said, I'm done. And I respect him for that. This is sometimes you don't know what you're getting into till you're, till you get there. So it's not for everybody.
Did you have any moments like that? Where you were like, oh, I kind of want to go back?
No, I didn't.
No,
I don't. You'd have to drag me back.
You're in your element.
Yeah. And you don't know what you don't know. But I would never. I always wanted to do the law enforcement side. So I think it's a good gig to work out there. It's definitely, you could do a full career, but it wasn't for me. I didn't. I enjoyed it, and now I convince everybody that will listen that they should start there, especially younger people.
We need to do a new Super Trooper set in the jail.
That would be something.
Yeah, just get some more people.
That would be.
Yeah.
He might be in then.
Yeah, then
He'll watch it and be like, I want to be a detention deputy.
So I started helping with the FTO program and because we were starting to get after I want to say 2009, was it 10, 11, 12, something, whatever year that we started rehiring.
Yeah, picking back up.
So you had to pick back up because you end up losing all these people due to forced budget cuts and just the economy in general. So you're like, wait 3 years and you basically have nobody. You have no new hires for the most part. So then, so catching up, it was a big catch-up game of trying to get more people in the door, so they needed extra help. So I said, sure, I'll do that. So I did that I did FTO for a little bit that time, and then I transferred to Narcotics.
How long were you in patrol before you went to Narcotics, would you say?
It was, probably about a little over 3 years.
Okay.
So how long were you in FTO?
So I was in FTO.
Oh, that first round anyway?
The first round, it was 6 months or so for the first round. And then I did it after I came back from Narcotics again. So, but the first round was like 6 months, and that was a good time. But it was just a lot of people going through.
But you're a relatively new deputy yourself.
Right. That's why I was alternate. So at that point I was an alternate. So it was like, you're new, but you at least understand what's going on.
Right.
So
Was there anything that you felt like, I mean, I'm sure you had things to get to, but like, was there anything that you thought was really important that like the recruits heard from you or got from your perspective?
I mean, really, my biggest thing was them going out there, besides learning paper flow and all that stuff, it was to make sure these people were going to be, putting the sheriff's office in a good light. I don't want to, my goal, my always saying was, don't dilute the brand. Mm-hmm. So it was like,
I need you in PR.
This is what, no, don't dilute the brand, because we have a good thing. We have a good thing going here at the sheriff's office, and we don't want people that are going to sully that or ruin the reputation. Mm-hmm. So it's treating people well, being firm with them, but also same thing I kind of say in the jail. You got to treat them. You got to treat people fairly, no matter what they've done, what they're doing, and you get more out of talking to them. Like, there's times that you can't do that with people, but for the most part, that's how you do it. You treat people like you would want to be treated if you were in the other end of the no matter what you did.
Yeah.
So
just making sure they're learning how to talk to people.
Learning how to talk, being appropriate, taking the proper action, treating them like they're. I mean, you're doing customer service at the end of the day. So so somebody called you for a reason. They want you to come out there. It might be nothing. It might be nothing to you. It might be a routine, normal thing. But if you can give them a positive experience, on the best you can for maybe their worst day, or maybe they're just calling to say, hey, we want to tell you about some drug dealers in the neighborhood. Great, I'll pass that along to the community policing, or I'll you know what, I'll take care of you. Like, great, they felt like their voice was heard, and so I like to make sure they could do that, and also make sure they could handle themselves in a situation where it's solo. Mm-hmm. So you always and you always would find people on the FTOs. When you're an FTO and you work a certain area, you'll find people that are local drifters or transients or whatever that are willing to help you out, to kind of push the limits of some of your. So you kind of
so you set them up with these
you're
problem people.
Like, hey, just say, hey, I'm going to come over here. He's going to ask you if he can search. Just it'll be around. Just be around. I said I need to see how they do and rate them. So you could always find people that were willing to play along and give a little bit of pushback, see what they do. But yeah, because I mean, you want to make sure they're going to follow the law. That's really the. And I mean, yeah. So that's it.
But you had relationships with with them.
You had relationships. You end up developing if you do your job right. You're out there talking to everybody. Mm-hmm. They tell you everything. That like there's so much benefit from getting out, a lost art of just walking around and getting to know your people instead of driving. You don't get any information by sitting in your car with the windows up, and the air conditioning on.
Right.
So you got to get out there and get to know your people that are maybe committing very minor crimes, or they have addiction problems or something, but they're still willing to. They know the game. They know that you're just there as well as them, and if they slip up, they're going to get caught.
Right. Do you think? How do you think the current generation of new recruits and so forth, how do they stack up, or what do you think some of the challenges may be for them, or what's your perception? Not that you get to deal with a lot of them, in your current capacity, but just, y'all talk.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of them they come in and they don't know exactly what to expect. And I feel like a lot of people now in general, just the way of the internet, the way that society is, there's not necessarily a ton of people looking for career jobs anymore. So you end up finding people that they look great on paper. They have a squeaky clean past, but then they're like, I'm out on the road. I've never done anything else. I worked at maybe retail or something, and you get out and you're like, what am I doing? And a lot of them figure it out. It's not that you can't figure it out. You can learn, but you see a steep learning curve on a lot of these people that just because on paper they have a very good, or they have massive education or something, but that doesn't translate necessarily to figuring out this part. They might be great writing reports, but that's the end all, not the
bread and butter of the job.
The bread and butter of the job, right? So I see a lot of people that grew up on. It seems like they might have grew up on their computer a lot. Mm-hmm.
Instead of like seeing Super Troopers and being like,
yeah. You had to go to the movie theater.
There's no way.
There's no way. Yeah.
That's awesome.
There's a lot. We hire. I think we do a good job hiring, and we weed out a lot of people in the process. So it's very competitive to get a job. But some people on paper look like they're shining stars, but you get there and you have to figure out for yourself if they really are. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Then when we took over we took over St. Pete Beach.
Yes.
And then that was another volunteer opportunity, I understand.
Yes, that was a volunteer.
Love trying new things.
Yeah, I love trying. Yeah, anything new, throw it at me. I'm down. So yeah, St. Pete Beach was wild. That was wild. It was like,
Yeah.
yeah, it turned into like a Tampa extension of partying
Really?
for bars, and yeah, that's where they would go over because there was no good beach over there. So they'd all come in and hit the beach bars, and there
Okay.
was a lot of like club scene and lots of transients. There was lots of when we took them over. There's a ton of transient population. They were nice weather. You know, it was in TI Treasure Island at least at the time you could drink like on the street. So people would be bouncing between there and
What
there.
could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
Yeah.
So yeah, it turned out to be wild. And there was a lot of drug motels and more of like apartments that we had to deal with initially, and it turned out to be pretty wild.
Was there like a, pardon the expression, but like there was a new sheriff in town, like with the regulars not being used to the level of kind of enforcement and the tolerance of a different agency? Like,
yeah.
was that a thing?
Yeah, it was big time. It was like, this is different. Like, we're not putting up with this. We're not going to.
Starman's here.
Yeah, that's what it was like. It was like we're not playing around with these people that think they can get away with whatever they want. So it quickly started turning around, and they're learning like, maybe we don't want to mess around here.
And because a lot of visitors too, though. So they
Lots of it, yeah. And the visitors don't want that. The people staying in the hotels, they don't want to deal with some local just wants to go and drink too heavily and fight nobody wants all that.
Yeah,
so there's a lot
fun.
of fights, a lot of disorderly intox, and a lot of transient issues that you don't want to deal with. That people don't want to deal with on vacation.
Yeah. Do you have any extra good stories from there?
From St. Pete Beach, well, there was this one time where one of these so-called Tampa people comes over, and they're with their girlfriend, got way too drunk, and they get into an altercation. The guy just in front of like a very crowded beach, he just picks her up and body slams her,
Oh.
and
my gosh.
batters her, and everybody's screaming for the police, like he's right there. So I'm like, all right, and then so he runs out into the Gulf, and like looking around, I'm like, hey, this guy just pulled up his jet ski there. I was like, can I borrow that? I was like, he's like, have at it. So I was like, well, I'll take the repercussion later. I took my gun belt off. I handed it to my backup, and I just threw my gun into my pocket, and I started circling them. And these people, this was before everybody had perfect cell phones. So I figure I'm like, somebody's probably got a camera or something.
Somewhere,
Yeah, but luckily I never saw it show up anywhere.
That would be
And now it's been
all over
long
the internet
enough.
now.
Yeah, now
Yeah.
there'd be no way to get. So I just circled the guy, and he finally gives up, and he walks back in after several donuts around him. He gives up, and the whole beach collapsed. It was it was a standing ovation. Like they. I'm like, is that good? And I wrote it in the report.
There's
Still
nobody to
looking it up.
Is it standing ovation in the report?
Not sure it was good, but everybody else said it was good.
They liked it.
Everybody loves it.
All worked out.
That is a thing though, like, with the beach, being out there if you're on, because we have, for listeners, obviously we have deputies that patrol the different beaches, and then they have, like, we don't have deputies assigned specifically to the sand under normal circumstances, but there's vehicles we
Right.
go grab and go out there. But it is tough, like, to get people to the beach, because probably it had to be around that time, 2013, 2014, we had the infamous Sergeant Bingham brawl out there.
Yeah.
And it took a long time because you figure deputies are coming. Yes, they're on the beaches, but you got to figure out where you are, number one. You don't always know if you're chasing somebody, so it's complicated. So you go to Narcotics.
Yep.
Anything notable there? What drew you there?
I always thought I kind of liked the idea of the whole acting thing.
Let me guess. You watched Miami Vice.
I can't be that cliche. At least as long as it wasn't training day. No, I really thought it was I was like, I figured I could talk to people on the street. I could figure this out. It'd be, you got to know who the local drug dealers were, but obviously it's a whole nother side. Just because somebody's good at finding drugs doesn't mean you're good at buying drugs, because you're turning into you're coming from like an alpha position to typically a very like beta position of a drug buyer because the alphas usually a lot of times, depending on what you're doing, like but street level, you have these dealers who thinks they're awesome, right? That's what they do. They can, so when you go into that, you're kind of taking a role of like, if you're buying a small amount of crack cocaine or fentanyl or methamphetamine, you're not some kind of baller. You know?
Right.
Yeah. You can't act the part like I'm so cool. I'm buying 3 pieces of crack.
You have to
Right.
feel
No,
a little weak and desperate.
Yeah, you have to be. Yeah, you have to put on that more of like.
May I please have some?
Yeah,
cocaine,
man. There you
please,
go.
sir?
Yeah, something. Yeah.
3 walks, please.
Yeah.
Just a morsel.
Yes.
Just a little quack.
Yeah. So that was fun. So
I never even thought of that aspect of narcotics with all these,
Yeah.
Yeah.
big hard guys
Yeah,
going
it's
in
hard
and
to
suddenly
go in
having
there.
to be
Yeah.
having to beg a little bit.
you have to. Yeah, you have
Yeah.
to, and you have to suck up your pride and be able to say,
Yeah.
I know I'm going to get you in the long run, but you got
Yeah.
you got to act the part.
Let them lord it over you a
If
little
you're
bit.
doing, if you're doing bigger stuff and you're trying to deal with like, you can. It depends. You have to play the role that you're doing. But when I was there, it was mostly street level. So you're trying to get the actual dealers to sell you stuff. So that's what you're willing to wait because they stand you up a lot and make you wait. And they call it doper time. So you're like, I'm on doper time. He said, I'll be there in 5 minutes. I'm turning the corner. You're like, you're not even like, you're miles away. Just
You're
trying to
still
keep you
in
to
bed
stay.
at
Yeah,
home.
you're still in bed. Yeah.
That's what I'm going to do next time I'm late, Ricky.
Yeah.
In the morning.
We're on 5 minutes.
Sorry,
I'm
Ricky.
on
I'm
doper
on
time.
doper
I'm on
time.
doper time. Yeah. So that was fun. I really, at the time, I saw the necessity for confidential informants, but I didn't like them personally.
No.
I thought they were most of them were the drug dealers trying to get paid for their off time and try to figure out who's who. And I saw through most of them, and I'm like, I can find my own people. And so I did a lot of unwitting deals and people. So unwitting, somebody's helping you get drugs, but they don't necessarily know, like the local prostitutes. So those ones you could figure out where they're going and try to get introductions from them. They think you're just a friend or somebody that's kind of, just a John or whatever, and they would take you over and show you, or buy it themselves and facilitate.
We don't really do any vice, any
Not
prostitution,
not
do we?
I don't think
They're
there's
just like
much
a
of that going
means
on.
to the
They're a
narcotics.
means to narcotics. So if they're just doing stuff between the consensual adults, although illegal, it's pretty low on most of the priority list for at least us at the time.
Yeah.
And so it was.
But
But
you
if they're
still
selling drugs, if they're facilitating
pick them
drugs,
up and then
and if they're
buy or-
predisposed to it, it's completely legal. You can ask them. They would go. Usually find them walking. You'd stroll around wherever the areas they're at, and you'd pick them up, and you could take them. They would show you exactly where the drug dealer. Where they say pull in here, pull in this part. They would take them to their, because you got to remember, most of these people are strung out on drugs. They're addicts, and they don't stay far from wherever they can get something.
Yeah.
So they're subsistence workers. So they're just getting enough to get the next fix. Most of them. But if they've gotten out to the street, that's really what it turned into. It's they're so far down the hole of addiction, unfortunately. But with that being said, they're in that lifestyle. I would go out there, go find them, and facilitate drug deals, and go meet people that way. And a lot of those, and then strip clubs. Those are adult entertainment places. They're just ravaged with drugs. There's all kinds of tricks. So I suggest if somebody's listening to it for tips on how to get away with stuff, you won't, because there's so many ways to do it. And if just don't sell drugs, that's the
easiest.
That's the takeaway.
That's really the easiest thing.
You're going to sell. I promise you, no matter what, you can't sell to all your friends and make any money. You got 2 options. You can sell to people and never make any money, real money, or you can try to make real money. You're going to have to expand your client base, and you're going to get caught.
Right.
It's just a numbers game.
So the big question that everybody always wants to know about narcotics and whatever, it always comes up like, do you guys have to do drugs? Or pretend to do drugs?
You could, yeah. So basically, no. I didn't do drugs. I didn't do any drugs. There were some times you would have to, you have to simulate marijuana or whatever. But now the thing about marijuana now is that there's so many legal CBD and all that stuff, and it looks the same and smells the same. So now you could add credibility without any kind of without any problems. At the time, there were some times that you get put in positions where they would try to get me to do drugs. I had one guy that I was trying to buy trying to buy crack cocaine from. He was a dealer that was going around for a while, and he was pretty good. He was cautious, and he said. So I pulled up. It was a mobile home park off of 28th Street, and I go down. They lead me. So this was actually crazy. He put me. He told me to meet him at the Days. I think it was the Days Inn, and so he said, "Get out and walk to the laundry area." I'm like, "This is sketchy." I was like, "Whatever. I'll stick my gun in my waistband and I'll go in
And you're
there.
like wired. There's somebody
Yeah,
listening
there's
to you.
somebody. Yeah, I
everything
have cover. I have somebody. They won't see him. They won't know who it is. But
Yeah.
there's somebody
Someone's
close
there.
at least. So I'm like, I really want this guy because he's been eluding all the different agencies that are trying to buy from him. I'm like, I'll be the guy that gets him. I can get him. And so I get out. I stand in the light. He's like, okay, good on face value. Yeah, I'll take it. And then he's like, follow me. So he went by and looked at me in the light. That's basically what it was. He sized me up in the light when he drove. I saw his car drive by, and he goes, all right, follow.
It's like, nope, not a cop.
Yeah. That's basically what. Yeah, he didn't. He's like, I don't think he's a cop, basically. So go to the next part, and so he pulls us down a one-way, like down into the very back end of a trailer park, into the side of a trailer, and he said, "All right, I'll give you some for free. You smoke crack. You go ahead, just smoke some." I was like, he's like, go into the trailer, go inside. You can smoke crack for free. Whatever. I go. I said, no, I really gotta pick up my kids. I can't be messed up like that at my in-laws' house. I can't do it. I go, I got to do it later. And they're like, well, it's fine, nothing then. And I go, come on. I kind of start going the whole like, man, really, I've been looking for you for weeks. I've been trying to meet up with you, blah, blah. He goes, well, the police been looking for me for 4 years. I go, okay. And so I go, come on, I said, here's the cash right here. Here it is. And he's like, no. And then some dude popped out of the trailer with like a butcher knife, and he held it up at me, and he's like, leave now. I'm like, yep, that's my sign. I said, guess I'm not going to get him this time. Wait, I'll say that he ended up getting gotten a buy bust, basically. But he was good. He was like, avoiding that stuff. But yeah, got him later anyway. So it didn't
worked
matter.
out.
It didn't matter. They got him had to bring him into another trailer, and they ended up just taking him down there.
Nice.
With the drugs on him. So,
and you didn't smoke crack, and you didn't
I didn't smoke crack.
Mutilated with a butcher knife.
Yeah, and
so.
I feel that's a win no matter what. I can swallow my pride that day and say, yeah, never mind.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So he's wanting to size you up, looking for wires and stuff. So
Yeah.
is it even possible to see them?
Yeah. What are they looking for? Is it?
I think that
They have like a mic pack on.
It's
Like,
gut-
oh, we got him.
I'd say honestly, at the time, it just did. Yeah, basically, it looked like the old school. At the time I was there, it looked like an old school wire, like the same exact thing you'd see on a movie. Yeah, where you tape it to yourself or whatever.
So
or
if he had
have
patted you down, he would have found it.
No, I mean, yeah, he could have. Yeah, for sure. I didn't. My goal was to try to not get patted down by anything but now the technology's evolved so much, you'll never know.
You could be wearing a wire now.
I could be.
We're already recording him, so.
Oh,
Yeah, well, it's counterproductive
Okay.
at this point.
I was wondering if it was just like, do you look too like put together? You have all your teeth.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well,
Like-
I don't want to say it now. I was gonna say the first thing I would do is look for people with perfect shoes. I'm like, why would you wear your perfect shoes? You're not a junkie. There's other ways to figure it out, but that's it's so hard now. You never know. I mean, if they have a full mouth of rotten teeth, I could probably say you're safe. I haven't met any of those guys yet, but maybe we need to hire one. I don't know.
Yeah, or get some like dental prosthetics with just
Maybe-
black out a couple
you're right.
of the teeth.
That's what I do.
You could.
If I was selling drugs, I'd go and bring a dental mirror, and I'd be like, let me peek in the back.
That's a nice crown you have
That's
there.
a
sir.
nice. Yes,
Yeah.
That looks like you have insurance.
Oh, man. So what else? Anything else notable in narcotics?
Yeah, it was a lot of very interesting times. It was a lot of fun. I'll say the worst day we had was I was going with John Cleary. We ended up doing a deal with somebody, and the person they had some weed on them. They were leaving a club, and they offered to smoke with us. Right, so we're like, at that point, I'm like, we can simulate this, but so we all pass around a bowl which is marijuana pipe. So I pass it, we pass it, and then the next day I woke up, I'm like, oh, I'm dead to the world. I'm like, what's wrong with me? So I'm like, I go and I have 104 fever. I'm like shivering, and I'm like, what happened? So I go to the ER, like, or the walk-in or whatever, and they go, yeah, you have flu type A. So I call John Cleary, and I'm like, how do you feel? He goes, I feel like I'm dead.
How many people were sucking on that?
It was just 3 of us, and I didn't talk to the other ones. So out of the 3 of us, 2 of us ended up with flu A. So I don't know.
There's a common denominator there.
So I feel like I'm dead.
Yeah, he's like, whatever happened, never going with you again. So yeah, needless to say, that was gross. I did have another guy that was like, we rented a house, like a very dilapidated house from a landlord that was that was close to the Gateway Motel. So we were using that as our place. Like we were the owners, and so we would do drug deal. We'd hang out there and just act like we're hanging out there, living there like in a flop, and get people to come and they would just drop off drugs left and right. So we'd use it for a short time, and then we set up an operation where everybody gets taken down. Say they try to call everybody back, and then just wait till they come to the room, and they get cuffed and set in the one room.
Oh my!
It was like one after another. There's some that would come in. They thought the cops would never find the drugs, and they put it in their mouth. So I'd have them sometimes come out and spit it in my hand. Like
Ew.
They would have this because crack cocaine is in its form is not water soluble, so you can store it in your mouth.
Oh.
So yeah, you can stick it in your lip. So
The
that's
more
what
you
a
know.
lot of them. Yeah. So it's when you do that, you can walk around especially if you're you buy enough to use. A lot of them store it in their lip, and so you don't catch them in a pat down or catch it in a container. So I'd have some of the girls, they'd come back out and they just like, here, just open your hand. They'd be like, oh, why am I
Got
doing
you
this?
something.
It's amazing. The only thing you ever caught was the flu.
Yeah. No kidding. Yeah, that was I'm like, oh, what? Why did we? Yeah.
Oh man.
Gross.
How
So,
long was that?
Narcotics?
Yeah,
I did that for about a year. That was
Oh,
about
wow.
that. I had enough. I had enough. I signed up to be a cop, and I'm like, I really had enough. This was fun. It would be but a long-term thing for me, doing just street level stuff. If you get into the longer-term investigations, but at the time they announced that you can get brand new Tahoe, like a 2013 Tahoe. You could go work 4 10-hour shifts on the road, be a full-time FTO, and have like every Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. I'm like, sounds perfect.
That sounds good. Yeah.
But you have to shave your beard.
You have to shave your beard. That was fine. At that time, I was like, I'm
whatever.
good. Yeah.
So then you sergeant's test at some point, like
Yeah. So the first time I wasn't at all ready to be promoted, but I'm like, I'm eligible. Why would I not go get a sneak preview? I'm like, why would I not take? I don't want to get promoted right now. I got plenty of other stuff I want to do, but why not look at it? They changed the test from an open book format to more of like just a knowledge base. And I'm like, well, let's see what it is.
See what happens.
Yeah, see what happens. I'm like, it may be the wrong mindset for some people, but for me, I was like, why am I not going to get a sneak preview of this test if I'm not looking for it this year at all? So I took it, and I'm like, I missed it by like a single point. I'm like, I didn't even look at the material. Yeah, I'm like, that was pretty good just by knowledge of reading it historically. So I took it again, and like the next year I ended up retaking
When
it.
you were ready to
yeah,
actually
I don't even know if I was even ready, but I was like, it's fresh in my mind. I go back through, and my way of studying, I feel like I have pretty good memory especially for the short term. So I took off like 3 or 4 days before the test, just read through all the material once or twice, whatever, the ones that were like high liability twice and stuff. And I got 90 something on the test. So I was like, for me, that was the way to study. Just
read through it. Yeah.
Block. Yeah. Some people sit for months. I have a hard time sitting still. So, it's like, like 3 days of just straight reading is torturous to me. That's probably why I couldn't be a vet, that part, but
Yeah.
no. So I took it and ended up taking the sergeant test, and eventually, before I got promoted, so I had taken the sergeant test, but then I ended up going to the auto theft task force that we started. That was a joint effort between all the agencies in Pinellas and then Tampa.
VCTF.
It was the auto theft task force, then it morphed to VCTF.
Okay.
So yeah, the auto theft task force, it kind of scaled down a little bit and then went to a full-time unit with us, St. Pete, Clearwater. I think that's it. And yeah, that was fun. That was wild. That was going down to the southern part of St. Pete, and it was just stolen car central. It was nuts.
Why do you think that was? Like, What did you guys have to do, or what did y'all do that traditional law enforcement practices like couldn't make it happen? Like,
Yeah. So what our tactics were strictly working with a combination of undercover cars along with marked units, and the marked units would basically stay out of the way, and then you'd go and spot, because a lot of them would give themselves away because this is weird because the car thefts of like the 80s, 90s were like chop shop, like it was organized crime. It was stuff that was. These people the people that were stealing cars and currently still, it's getting better now. But at the time, the people they steal it to joyride. It's just for fun. It's kids.
Yeah.
It's kids as young as like 10 years old.
That's I remember because this is like what 13, 14, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Because I was teaching in South St. Pete, and I just remember it was just insane.
That's probably when the catalyst started, and it just continued on for like 16, 17, 18. It was all those. It was wild. And so they went from chip keys that had like a micro chip or and then they went to the key fobs. So key fobs were a great thing for push button start. Everybody wants push button. They wanted to push button start at the time, and so what kids were doing is you could tug on the door handle and you could tell right away if the key was in it. So they would know that they can just push the button and drive off. So there was nobody learning the hot wire car. I don't say nobody, but very few people. Some of those high end people have those crazy contraptions that can hack key codes and stuff. But that's not the norm. The norm is an unlocked vehicle, keys inside, and that's the message that should get out to everybody. That's the only way your car is going to get stolen. Not the single best way to do it is don't leave your gun in your car and leave your car door locked, and you're not going to make problems. They'll tug on your door handle, go to the easy one. They're not breaking windows typically. These kids aren't.
Because they're not like criminal geniuses who have apprenticed to somebody learning how to hotwire a car.
Right. They don't. They are strictly. They're taught on YouTube. Opportunists.
Yeah.
They're the only time they do hotwired is when they figured out that the big TikTok trend of the Kia boys.
The Kias. Yeah.
So that you could take a screwdriver, basically pop off the ignition cover, and then you could use a USB to start the cars. So that was probably it wasn't the owner's fault, but that was a few years Kia that somebody figured out in some metropolis that they figured they could steal a bunch of cars. But by Pinellas County standards, it was the time was key fobs, and the big thing was it wasn't necessarily people thinking they're doing the right thing. They had a key fob in the wife's or the husband's car. So it wasn't the car that necessarily that they're driving. They check them both, rummage them. You're like, oh, I have my wife's lockout key in my car. I have my husband's lockout key in my car. And they just swap them, take them both. Yeah, and then we had some that they got them back 3 times. They never rekeyed them, and the person still had to spare. Yeah, we had them. We had the people would re-steal the same vehicle.
They just have it coming. I wouldn't even respond to that
I
call.
I really
you don't want
just put
your
a
car
sign on
anymore.
it that says free car.
I know. I'm like, hey, if you have this fob, then just come back and let me know. Can you return it by morning?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that was. Some people were like, I don't know how many times you can tell them. So you have to. So yeah, but that was an epidemic of just ridiculous amounts of every kid thought it was a good idea. Every bad kid thought that was the thing to do. And we even had one, the kid was a tiny little guy. He was probably 11, 12 years old. He was talked to a man at the gas station and said, hey, your back tire's flat. And the guy went to go look, he jumped in his car and took off with it. And that was.
Could his feet even reach the pedals?
I think he figured it out, just driving with
He's
his
standing.
over the yeah. Some of them you see them. Like,
It's like little rascals. They're stacked in a straight jacket or a long jacket. And
Trench coat.
a trench coat.
Three
Yeah.
raccoons in a trench coat.
that was one of the giveaways though. With the when they drove by and you could see that. Well, a lot of times they had gloves on. They were driving with gloves on. That was a dead giveaway. But when you couldn't see them over the back of the seat, you look twice. You'd be like, oh yeah, that's definitely that guy.
We don't think Gam Gam's out rolling.
Yeah. I mean, that ain't you. Or the car's registered somewhere to a nice neighborhood. So what they would actually do, these kids would go. They got slick. They not that they were criminal masterminds, but they learned that if you went on Zillow, and you would punch it, you'd look 100 miles in either direction, and they would find the most expensive neighborhoods, and they'd go take trips out there and go get as many cars as they can. They'd pick the safest and they'd go in the rich. They'd just go to and they'd like to get foreigns. That's what they called them. So anything they'd get foreign cars. They would drive 3-4 counties. They would go over and find the nice neighborhoods, circle through them, and they would go 100 miles in any direction from here, any night of the week. And they'd come back with a bunch of cars. So we wouldn't even know that they were stolen. They wouldn't be on it because we would have
It's too
ILP
far
do a
out.
hot list. Yeah. And you wouldn't know that, but you're like, we're finding cars from Orange County. And I mean, we're getting from far south. You're like, and they're all from nice neighborhoods. So they got
I
smart.
like that they're doing research.
I do
I
too.
think we
I
need
feel like they have
more
some,
smart criminals.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of interest, for the story, not for
Absolutely.
So when you catch these kids, like how are they? Are they like, oh, you got me, we'll do it again, because that's a whole other podcast for another day? But you know, like what?
Yeah, I mean, typically they know that they either drive until they crash, or they try to find a place to bail and they just run. They rarely ever give up. You have to chase them down, or they try to hide in places. And we had to use the canine a lot and the helicopter. But that was the time we upgraded our camera to that really awesome system. So it was. They started to be like, whoa, you can actually see us. We're not getting away that way. You have to get home. So that was the trick, was to get inside somewhere, and we try to get them anyway. But it's a cat and mouse game, and we'd recover a lot of the cars. It was very successful in the recovery of stolen cars. But at the end of the day, it was, these people are leaving their keys in the car.
Right.
I mean, sometimes it's like, you got to ask, is it worth it?
Right.
And I mean, a lot of it was like, hey, this is unfortunately, it's going to raise everybody else's insurance.
Right.
But it's mostly a crime that the victim's getting their car covered.
Right.
And so who's the real victim?
Right.
Everybody else that's paying premiums.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about this the other day. We try to put out, information when we have a slew of conveyance burglaries, car burglaries. And we kind of put stats together, because sometimes they'll just hit a neighborhood and it's like insane. Like they're getting cars out of it, they're getting guns, they're getting, whatever. And, Ashley deals with, on social media. I mean, the responses are, most people are like, this is dumb, lock your car. Like the basic, whether it's like, oh, you guys are, blaming victims and whatever. But it's like, there's two problems here. One, of course, you have people even, their stuff in their cars and their cars unlocked. But then you have a juvenile justice system that is a revolving door of sorts.
Right.
And it's like, we're just trying to solve the problem.
Yeah.
It's insane that, people really need to understand, like, this is just the easiest way to solve this problem, because we can't control the other piece of it.
Yeah, we can't control the other piece. And it's sad. I mean, I understand the juvenile should be given, they have an undeveloped or not fully developed prefrontal cortex. They have issues that they make rash decisions. And sometimes they have a lot of home factors that
absolutely
play
impact
into that,
that,
because
yeah.
they grew up in an environment. I understand they have nothing. They have nothing to. They have no toys. They're stealing for entertainment. They don't get enrolled in things because they don't have care at the house. So I feel for that. But how many times can we physically arrest you before? I mean, something gets done,
right?
Because I'd rather them get to the point where they're punished moderately, instead of having to get hammered when they turn 18 or direct filed when they do something bad enough. Like if there was more severe consequences, it would be much better for them in the long run. Maybe they get more severe consequences that matter, and they know they're serious, and then they don't do that. They don't progress. They're like, this was enough. But when everything's like, I can get out, no problem, see my friends, we go and do this again, we do it again, then you get hammered. You're like, wait a second. And then these kids are literally crying at the end. Like when they're like, oh my gosh, the judge, or they've determined, the state attorney and the judge and all this stuff, they're like, this guy's getting direct filed now. That means he's getting charged as an adult. Like, wait, I want to go to JDC, or I want to go to PJAC. Sorry. And they're crying in the back of the car. Like, I won't do it again. I'm like, how many times?
Right.
How many times are they decided to direct file you, until they decide to direct file you, which is a lot, unless you do something really heinous. But
so this is a great segue for talk about home and get to that. So you are you do VCTF, you go back to patrol as a corporal.
Yes.
And then you end up getting promoted.
Yes.
And your first assignment is
home. Yeah, right. Yep. I went to the road for a little bit, then I actually back to St. Pete Beach as a sergeant for a little bit.
Okay.
So back to there. So but right after that I went to home.
Which is
habitual offender monitoring enforcement.
perfect for all our listeners.
Which is a task force that was as a result of the very, the Tampa Bay Times did a story on the stolen car epidemic, and was really kind of a different approach, to this with multiple agencies. So if you could just briefly just kind of talk about home. Home is still around today, doing great work, but just the cliff notes of what home is.
Yeah, so home was developed because there was a lack in, I'd say, supervision of juvenile offenders by just the juvenile justice system. So in Department of Juvenile Justice was typically the only game in town when it came to supervising youth that were on probation. And there was a different philosophy, and we wanted more of like a more in-your-face type, we're coming. And you're not going to know when we're coming. You're not meeting us any place. It is straight up, you're going to be checked on at whatever time of the night, day, holiday, doesn't matter. You're going to be checked to see if you're violating your curfew. And if you are, you're going back to PJAC and going to have to tell the judge why. So that was the main thing. And it was very, very strategic on how it was done because if you had to have, it was 5 felonies for the intensive kids. It was 5 felonies in a calendar year. So if you do that, then we determine that you need to be monitored very heavily. And then there's the radar unit. But the radar kids, that was a lot of other kids that didn't quite meet that criteria.
Okay. They were like ones to watch, but not quite.
Yeah, right.
And that was
they were borderline. They were on probation or they were on some kind of sanctions, but they didn't meet that 5 felony threshold. But they were well on their way. It was several.
Just a matter of time,
right?
Unless somebody stepped in.
So yeah,
That's
sometimes
insane.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the threshold though. Just how do you get on the home?
Yeah, so you have to be
radar?
on some kind of sanctions. So meaning you have to have some court ordered sanction, meaning you have to be either sentenced to probation. And usually that entails having a curfew, there's exceptions to curfew, obviously so you're kind of working with you're not directly supervising them because they have a juvenile probation officer, JPO, but you're in there doing supplemental. So you're supplementing them, and not only is it like monitoring them on social media, not only writing search warrants and subpoenas for anything that they're doing with weapons and any other crimes. So you're basically taking this core group of kids and working it in reverse. So you're like, what are these guys doing? Are they where they're supposed to be? Are they committing new crimes? And what can we do that if we can't worry about the other side of the coin to see what's going to happen at the end, but how many times can we put them in front of the judge if they're doing something wrong? And the goal is for them to do nothing wrong.
Right.
The whole thing is just to assume that we're coming at any time. We might see you 2-3 times a night, and you better be on your toes because it's it might, and it gets annoying sometimes. But we tried to be as accommodating as possible. Like if one of the parents like, hey, I'm sleeping, I don't want to wake up every time, but here's his window. We'd go around. We'd accommodate. They say this is the deal. Knock on the window and. They'd come to the door if they were there, but a lot of times they go and they'd try to play games, but we outsmarted them a lot of times. They would have mom and grandma or mom and dad or whatever, and they'd have 2 different houses. Like, oh no, I was at this house. Sorry, we have someone at that house too, knocking at the same time because we got a convoluted story from your probation officer. So yeah, it was a lot of that, and I feel like when I went there, I really tried to push the doing the investigations, like really like for just probation violations that doesn't carry much weight. Right. So I would like to say if they had guns or whatever, let's go get the guns. Let's go find out what we can do how can we get this guy to, if he's committing a crime, we need to find a way to solve this. And we got a lot of guns. We got a lot of convictions based on gun photos. That we could actually take them and we could validate them through investigative
So they're posting
means.
on social media. They're on Instagram and they show themselves posing with guns.
So they were a lot of our bread and butter for writing subpoenas and warrants stuff were for cellular devices or for social media accounts, which they would be a lot of times friends with us unbeknownst to them, and they would post a Snapchat or an Instagram or Facebook story and they would flash a gun, and you can't prove a lot of them, but we would get they'd cover the serial numbers, but we could do other stuff. We could go and find all the different characteristics that proved it was a real gun. So through our investigative techniques, we were able to validate the gun and say this is real. So we had to prove basically date. We had to prove time, location that occurred in Pinellas in our jurisdiction, and so we
used some pretty clever ways.
We had some very
those,
clever
right?
ways. We would try to. I don't know if you've ever seen that guy on YouTube. We were like the first people that. You tell him where you are, like on Instagram or whatever. You show a picture of like a quick little view of him, and he finds you on a map anywhere in the world.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so we were like the original doing that. Yeah, we were doing the original. Like we would use ruses and all kinds of stuff to get in their house. And I was like, there's a picture of a crucifix in here with a yellow wall. I said, I don't know where that's at, but so we don't know. If we don't know where that's at, we can't do anything about it. So we're like, okay, run your body cam. See if you can go to, we think it's this house. Try to wait till he's at grandma's. That's what we're thinking. And I said, that's one of the few places he's listed. I'm like, there it is. It's on the west wall. So we got it on camera. We were able to use that to secure our legal paperwork. We would do, so you're like, okay, that's location. Like certain parks, you'd see it. They'd be flashing at the pavilion. You're like, okay, I got to find that artifact in the somewhere. So it was like we had a constant game. We got good at Google Earth trying to find everything. And we're like, okay, this is not in Pinellas. We'd have to either pass it off or because a lot of other places weren't willing to do it. It's a lot of effort.
Oh yeah.
But for us, it was worth it. So yeah, we had all kinds. Then that was the tough part. Then you'd have to go and so you'd prove that it happened in Pinellas. That's one part of it. You had to prove when it happened because in order for it to really matter to get the felony, you had to prove that they were adjudicated delinquent by the time and so they could say, oh no, this was a picture before. So we'd use creative ways like new tattoos. We'd always document their new tattoos. Hey, cool new tattoo. What'd you get? So that was we'd have timestamps. We got as creative as because all of them wore the latest shoes. We'd find the release drop dates of the shoes. So we'd be like, hey, that wasn't dropped on Nike's, on the sneakers app until that day they were delinquent. So we'd find them by that. So we'd put together very creative packets to be able to convict.
Wow.
And that actually got them some time.
Wow.
Yeah, we had one where we had to write a separate policy for the APHIS techs there, so they would able to. We recovered drugs. But we had more of a constructive possession case, but we had the identical bag and the identical drugs that were in the guy's hand on a Snapchat post. I believe it was Snapchat, and from getting the guy's iPhone. And so all these social media platforms, they degrade your photos. Sure. So you can't get super details, but if you can find they posted and you can reasonably assume that it's the phone that they used. And if you go and get an extraction, so you write a warrant for the phone, you go in our DFU, digital forensics unit can extract them once the legal process is done. Mm-hmm. So we had one where it's like, oh, that's such a good photo, and we could see his fingerprints. So we had to rewrite it. So they actually got fingerprints off a photo. So meaning like they reversed, like almost had to draw the lines on the actual picture. Since the new phones take such good photos, you could actually get a fingerprint in reverse instead of leaving a fingerprint. You cross-reference it to a photo print.
Has anyone ever done that before?
I'm sure. I don't know. We tried and it worked out. It worked out, and it was good for
that
conviction.
is incredible.
Dang.
Yeah. So we really, I mean, and a lot of that's helped. There was we had a Pinellas Park detective that was on there, Per Hoagland. He's back in their SIU now, but he was very creative, and he would do like I would let him free to be like, let's see what we can do, work with this, and he got really good reputation with the state attorney's office, and so we got creative and stuff and it worked, and I know our homicide has used it since then. They've called and they've kind of they collaborated with us on a few things while I was there. So it was cool. It was very rewarding too.
Yeah.
Even if honestly, if they got let out again, it was good practice for next time. Mm-hmm. You're like, all right, we know they're going to do it again. Proof of concept.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, since I've left, followed a lot of the kids that were there. A lot of them are doing long stints in prison or they're deceased from criminal means.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, either shootings at each other or getting shot and killed, and that's the typical.
That's terrible.
Yep.
And at that point,
because it's like you said, like I say this all the time, but you're the common denominator of like the 5 people you're closest to, and a lot of these kids grow up in these, and that's what everybody's doing, and so that's what they end up doing, and they're stuck in it. And,
they don't have a chance,
right?
Yeah.
And so hopefully, by doing this kind of thing with some accountability, and hopefully it can get more intense over time. Like I don't know, I know. Everybody's frustrated about it when it comes to it because a lot of these cars getting broken into, it's by juveniles.
Yeah.
right.
Yep, that's the main. I mean, there's some crime that comes up here from South Florida that does like they actually break windows and they go to health clubs and stuff like that, and they look for people leaving obvious stuff in there, break a window, pull up close with a big van. That's different, but the ones that just rummage, it's straight up kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not, and yes, it's the victim is the owner of,
Yes.
whatever. But then also, depending on some of them, they flee from us, they crash, they
Right.
could injure people. There's
Yes.
the guns they steal could be used in crime.
Absolutely.
So it's just like, we can't solve all the problems, but if we can just get you to lock your door, there's there's a little bit of a better chance, make it a little bit harder on these guys.
With those that threshold, you said 5 felonies. What can you give like some examples of what a juvenile will have as a felony?
A lot of times, like we were talking about a lot of the auto burglaries.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the bread and butter with grand thefts and auto burgs.
Is that like, so that's based on like the amount of things they stole, or because there's a threshold for like misdemeanor and felony for that.
Yeah,
correct?
anytime you enter into your conveyance, it becomes a felony once you enter. So it's not by dollar amount anymore; it's by entering.
Okay, I must be thinking of.
Yeah, with theft has different.
Yes.
Like
Would they still,
different thefts.
would they still go into home if it was like criminal mischief more than $1,000 damage, or stealing from Ultra
Any
more
felony,
than that?
right?
Is it,
Yeah,
or are
so
those
that, yeah,
considered
no,
like
no, that would,
not
well,
as serious?
if you do 5 of those, yeah, you're good, and you're sanctioned. So
Okay.
basically, like you end up getting the sanctions. I guess there's a hypothetical point where you could not be on any kind of
Sanctions.
but I don't think I've not
Yeah.
seen it. Typically, by that time, they have to do something because there's a DRE risk assessment, and so initially, when a kid goes to PJAC, they get scored based on that risk assessment tool, and they'll go and see if they score to either get outright release, which so kids that don't do anything, like kids that don't have any history or just commit a theft, they're going to get outright release typically on their first time. They're going to parents going to pick them up. They're not going to have any sanctions. But you go there and you're there 5 times, you're going to end up getting scored on these 5 felonies, and you're going to end up on supervised release. So you mean you can go there. I mean, or you might get over 21 days to the JDC.
So is that the absolute worst that can happen to a juvenile unless they get adjudicated an adult?
I mean,
21 days and then supervision?
They do. Well, a lot of times the 21 days is an initial, meaning that it will be, it's kind of weird because so with juveniles, they have to make the determination on a risk because there's no bond schedule.
Okay.
So they have to make the decision right away what's going to happen. So if they score out to go to JDC for 21 days, they're going to be considered held. So but they might get sanctions after that. Most of the stuff is honestly done sanctions or programs. They might get sent away to a different juvenile program. Sometimes they're waiting bed space. Sometimes they're put on ankle monitor.
Okay.
So yeah, but no, the 21 days is technically not not punitive. It's just a risk assessment. So it's based on the risk assessment.
Gotcha.
So they're either trying to, and the state attorney's office has certain times and guidelines. They have to try to wrap these cases up pretty quick that are just not going to be filed as an adult. So yes, to answer your question, basically that's de facto a lot of times what they consider punishment.
Okay.
Is being held.
Yeah.
This might be out of, I know you haven't been in home for a little bit, but like with the surge of school threats, which those qualify as a felony, like is there any overlap with generally in home or no?
Well, sometimes I say a lot of those are not. I mean, so we take those very seriously, the school threats. And if you write down a threat that you're going to do some mass shooting or anything like that, you're going to go to jail. I don't care who you are. That's what's going to happen because you can't do that. It creates a lot of issues for everybody, and there's no joking about that. But yeah, a lot of those the home kids, I would say they're wise to a lot of that stuff. These are the ones you catch doing that stuff are not necessarily the hardened. They're not hardened criminals because a lot of people that end up doing mass attacks and stuff don't have any record other than that.
Right.
They've been brewing, and I actually after home, I don't know if we want to talk about this now, but after home I went to threat management as a sergeant. Well, it was relatively new. What was getting after it got stood up.
I forgot that. Yeah.
So I went there after that, and that was eye opening. That you see all this stuff and the amount of information flow that was there, and you're making decisions that were just. You're taking chances, but you're also weighing the options you can't be worried about every single thing if you could get lost so fast there. So you have to decipher information, and we have a whole team of ILP, intelligence-led policing analysts, and they really do a good job. They do a deep dive in all these people. When you get a threat, they have to go through and give you their life story. and everything they've ever done, everything we know about them. And you can see some of these people that the goal is to get them off the pathway to violence.
Right.
Because that is because most of them, like we were just talking about, they're not home kids. They're not like those guys are not your typical ones that do these unfortunate school shootings and stuff. It's people that are sleepers, and they a lot of times they give people leave signs. Yeah,
Right.
There's
Well, that's what
signs.
you always hear about after the fact. It's it's almost
He had a manifesto,
It's predictable,
you know,
and it's like,
yeah.
oh well, how many times did law enforcement touch this person, or what signs, what warning signs, and people, I think, raise eyebrows with the amount of resources that we have directed towards threat management, because there's a lot of resources involved. It's expensive and it's new, so relatively new.
Yep.
But you don't want to be holding the ball on the other end when it's, oh well, did we know about this? Is there something that we could have done? Is there resources we could have? Because there are a lot of success stories with threat, and all the work that they do, and we'll get some good threat peeps, here and there in the future, I'm sure, as it continues to grow and really get the lowdown on it, because there's so many resources coming together, because the same thing. The issue is always, anytime you have an issue, whether it's juvenile car theft, issues with the system, what have you, it is a system issue where all of the people are not sitting at the same table with the same goal. But I can say that threat management, they have their threat assessment meetings. They sit down and they have all the right people around the table to make sure that nobody's going to fall through the cracks, and make sure that serious threats are addressed. We get people off that pathway, as you mentioned, but also, some people that need more attention.
Yeah, it's a new form of law enforcement. Like in the scheme of law enforcement, it's very just scratching the surface, and it's evolved a lot since I've left. But it is. I think it's probably one of the most necessary things that you can have. We don't want to be caught with any kind of rock left unturned when it comes to that kind of situation, and breaking down the silos of communication are like the main objective, where you're like, what can we do for this person? Because a lot of them are just so early on their pathway. They don't even know they're on the pathway to do that yet. Yeah. They just know that there's a perceived grievance. They feel like whether some girls don't like them or whatever else, they have no, or they have no friends and stuff like that. They start manifesting a hatred towards everybody. They might not be criminals, but their whole goal is just they get stewing in their own mind. And if you can sometimes just being the detective that goes out and talks to them can take them off right away, because they're like, hey, somebody listens to me. Like they're going to come, whether they just are talking to them and like, hey, I'm going to come visit you every once in a while. What do you want to talk about? We can get you teamed up with these people, some program. So I think that it's hard to quantify the success of threat management as a whole. But I can tell you just some stories of the people that we talk to out there, and the cases we get, and how we can use every tool at our disposal to get them off that pathway. And that's a rewarding, and it's very, very time consuming, personnel intensive, like you said, but well worth it. Because at the end of the day, we don't want to be the ones that they park here and say, well, you guys knew about all this. Why didn't you do anything? Well, we didn't talk to each other. We never, they had this information. We had this. No, not anymore. So those not that something still can't happen, obviously, because, but if it does happen and somebody just came out of nowhere and does it, nobody can control it. But there's typically things like they call it leakage and different manifesting of that, or manifesto. And there's a lot of signs that everybody like, we should have known that one would happen. Well, if you see something, you better say something. If you think I'd rather have too much information than too little.
Right.
So there should be no excuse to be like, everybody knew that was going to happen and not report it, because you can be anonymous if you report that stuff.
And is that how things typically come to the attention of threat? An anonymous tip, or a tip from a family member, or is there some other way that people get on your radar?
So mostly not. Mostly that happens. That's a lot of it. Somebody makes a report of some suspicious person, or like they say, hey, my neighbor's really doing this. I think he's going off the deep end. There's that. But a lot of it just comes from law enforcement on the streets interaction. Okay. Or a social media. Like a lot of it comes from posts and people transmitting data that's inappropriate, or they're starting to get, there's the underground world of the internet is wild. It's a wild place.
Dark web?
That's really, there's dark web, but there's even there's these Discord chats and all this stuff that find groups of like-minded individuals, and they can create their own monster. And it's relatively.
They're just like feeding each other with their obsessions and their
right. And so a lot of times you might get the FBI or something gets these tips, and they said so it comes from it comes from everywhere. It's an open spigot that goes to them, and they have to. And some of it comes. A lot of it comes from the schools and that kind of stuff. So incidents that happen at school that manifest like that, and we try to steer these people away from going down the wrong path. So it's a very good program, though.
Do you have any good success stories you could share from Threat?
I mean, it's like you said, it's hard to quantify, but we've
right,
had a lot of people.
It's a thing that's not happening,
it's
so it's hard to quantify.
You talk to these people, they say really bad things, and I guess the only success story is they said they were going to bomb the store, and they didn't. But I mean,
that's a win.
We can call it whatever we want, but I guess the thing is, we'll never know.
Right.
We'll never know what the success stories are. We know that I can say success stories that we got a lot of people mental health help that got them off the. Not necessarily off the pathway to, but they got them out of their head, got them medicated, got them with the proper therapy, and they're doing well now. So I say that's a commonplace success.
But that even goes full circle back to when you were talking about, a lot of these people don't belong in jail.
They don't belong in jail.
So
a lot of
help.
Yeah, if the public doesn't even know how much we do. I mean, I don't know if any other place that does anything like this, any other agency. I don't know if any other agency that has a homeless shelter. That's right. I mean, we go. It's well beyond law enforcement.
Right. Oh yeah.
What happens here, which a lot of people don't even realize how far we go to try to help out our local population.
Yeah.
To keep them out of jail.
Right.
Keep them out of jail.
Wherever.
Yeah.
Because those are systems we can't touch. So we're trying to help how we can.
Yep.
Right.
I know our social workers in the jail do amazing things.
Yeah.
Both with when they're in the jail and then their transition out.
Yeah.
Helping them get resources.
Yeah, we're trying to actively put ourselves out of business.
No kidding. Yeah. That's fine. Hey, you know what though? It hasn't worked yet.
We'll keep at it though.
Right.
Yeah.
So you did you get promoted lieutenant out of Threat?
Right out.
Okay.
To patrol again.
Straight back to patrol.
Yeah,
okay.
back to patrol.
Shift commander. That's a big job.
That was a big job. Yep. That was very rewarding. That's good. You get to steer the ship of your whole shift.
Right. We talked about that before. Like that's one of the toughest jobs there is in the agency because
I would say so.
You're making all the calls.
Yep. It's on you. It's on you. So that's especially after you be away from patrol proper for many years, and you come back and you're like, I don't know anybody.
Yeah.
You're like,
But they all have to obey and respect you.
Yeah. So
Got to get out there.
So you have to get back out there and kind of start
bang out a traffic stop.
Yeah,
for the first
you're
time
like,
in a while,
try not to sound bad when you're trying to get your feet back.
Right. You had to watch Super Troopers again.
Yeah, had to, for sure.
Get back
For
in
sure.
in the game.
You have to be the voice of reason, even though the people like you might be the fun killer,
right,
on a lot of things because people come up with wild ideas. I know I did,
right.
So you got to be the one that says absolutely not.
Different perspective.
But you do like to encourage creativity.
I love to encourage creativity, but some people's creativity is a little outside of they color way outside of maybe off the paper.
Off the paper.
So no, I love creativity. I think that we had I had a lot of success with. You got to follow the bookends of the rules. So, I mean, I had some instead of these people, sometimes they're like, hey, these cars flee and, we don't have anything that our pursuit policy will allow. I said, okay. I'm like, it is what it is. I said, why don't you go and put it stationary. They all have to stop and get gas. Go put a stationary person at the gas station and go find the cars that are going to run, like i.e. rental cars that they put their own tint on. I mean, it's pretty obvious. And why don't you go get a photo of the person that gets out, do a traffic stop, and then just let them go. And guess what? You have their photo. Go do some investigative work. It'll be good for you. So some fun stuff like that. We could get creative and all that stuff. And so that was good to be able to steer that. And obviously we're looking for more, we need more deputies. We need people to come in the door. We need really qualified people. So it's some days you ran a little short, and it is what it is. So you couldn't have the fun you want to and plan some extra events, but no, it's a really it was very rewarding. So
we were just talking how it seems like with maybe just traditionally, it's like I always have to have this authoritarian presence. And so it's just nice to hear, like it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But for a time, it seems like that was more of like, I have to be authority. And people don't necessarily respond super well
No,
to that.
This current. I'll speak for the current generation. They don't want to be talked. Nobody wants to be talked to like that. They don't want to be yelled at. They don't want to.
Right.
Most people that do something wrong, they know they've done something wrong, and you can just talk to them, and they're like they hang their head, and they're like they don't want to disappoint you.
Right.
So, but yelling. I mean, I don't think yelling at grown people is unless you have to.
Right. There's a time.
There's a time and place.
Yeah. But because we were talking earlier, just about the generational differences, and you're interesting because you've been around a minute.
Yeah.
And there's still just there's a big difference between folks at the agency and how they approach that and how they and everybody has their own style, right?
Yeah.
And there's some people I can think of a couple people in the agency, like if they come up to me all nice to me, I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Like, what's wrong with you? Because you just have that, and I get that that piece of it, but. It is interesting to hear just different perspectives on that because but on the flip side, i.e. all these kids that you deal with in home and whatever, it's like, you hear everybody has a story of seeing a kid misbehaving in the store or slapping a parent or talking back to him. You're like, oh, I would not be alive if I did that when I was growing up. So it's
another world. I mean, I can kind of relate to both sides because I've been here, like you said, I've been here a minute, but I also was like probably on the cusp of the generation that everybody gets a trophy to.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like in that transition period, but I didn't like no cell phones, nothing. I was outside playing and all that stuff. But I also it kind of became like at least my parents and stuff were never like really strict. Like I was never like really yelled at and all stuff. So I'm like, and I think that's more of a commonplace, but not to an extent that maybe is now where you see kids
like if you did something wrong, you got in trouble.
Yeah, right. Get in trouble. But it's not like I don't personally respond like you yell at me. I'm like, I'm more of a person. Like if you're a boss or whatever and you're yelling at me, I'm like, I'm more of a shutdown. Like I'll listen to you, but I'm not really respecting
it's like
you're
in your feelings right now.
Yeah, I'll let you get over
Let me know
that
when you're done.
And when you want to talk normally, we can we can continue this.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, luckily, I think that's changed a lot from the time when I started.
Right.
Because that was a lot of, like you said, I think the perception of like it's like do as I say, blah blah. It was that style is phasing out completely. I think
it's still around.
It's still around.
Yeah.
But it's still. But most of the time, it's about. I mean, it's continually turning into not that.
Right.
It's not, and I think like that. Yeah, we're still a paramilitary organization, but it's not. This isn't boot camp either.
Right.
So.
It seems like there's more of a turn to like relating to people, because it's hard to relate to somebody who's demanding all these things.
If you don't, you can demand. Yeah. I find that people will do much more. They'll work way harder, and they'll do much more for you and for the agency when they know that you actually care about their personal, not necessarily every bit of their personal feelings, but when you care about them in general, and you want the best for them too.
Sure.
So yeah, I've taken that through all the different steps of leadership I've been so far. It's always been, hey, if I'm yelling at you, it's because I'm telling you to duck. Right. Like seriously, they're a member here, they're an adult. They know they have to make the conscious effort to change behavior. So there's ways to do it that doesn't involve screaming at them like they're
a kid.
Yeah, and I had that happen to me when I first started. Right, I basically got screamed like I was 19 at the jail. Did something that they didn't agree with about moving people without some kind of approval or whatever. And I remember I'm like, what is this? Like, why would you even? Why is some lieutenant screaming at me for what? For something so petty? I'm like, and it didn't resonate with me. I'm just like this. I'm just gonna not.
Message not delivered.
Message not delivered. It was like I'm like. I think you're yelling at the wrong guy, but I said, okay, if that's what you say, I'm new, whatever.
Right.
But yeah, so I've taken that, and everybody's worked with supervisors that you're like, you'd walk away from every conversation like, I'll do what you're saying because of your rank, not because of the respect I have. I respect the rank, but not necessarily
the holder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your love of animals kind of came back out when you went to shift commander because you were sending me animal stuff. I was loving it.
I know you love that, Ashley.
Yeah.
The dog. You sent me the dog that you actually it was your dash cam and I think your body cam of getting the dog.
Yeah.
And then a snake. I remember a snake.
Yep. There was a there was a rat snake in somebody's house.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just saw the call. I was listening to Live 911, and I think it was the 911 operator goes, "Yeah, we don't send deputies for that." And I'm like, "I'm passing by." I'm like, "You don't know we do. We don't, but I might."
Yeah.
So I went and snagged it for him out from behind their water heater. And but yeah, no, I've had some interesting animal stories.
Yeah.
The chasing the dog that was running, little baby puppy Bumper.
Oh yeah, that was his name.
Bumper,
Yeah. Oh, I loved
And
that
running through the
detail.
rain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was pretty good. You did a good job with the putting it
With
together.
the edit. Oh yeah, I love the song. I like the song I put
It
with
worked
it. I
out.
was reminding them about it.
Yeah. No, I had quite a few. There was
So we recently had a deputy who became, I think, like world famous for rescuing some baby possums. But you did that before it was cool,
I
right?
did it way before it was cool.
Yeah,
Man,
tell us about
when I
that.
worked midnights, I would go and I'd check every possum. I'd check them if they look fresh, like because obviously you're patrolling the same area, right? So you patrol the same area, and if you know it was because for people that don't know, possums they're marsupials, and they end up they store all their babies they actually they're born and they crawl right into the pouch and they live there, and then they connect to their mother's nipple, and they are able to survive until they come out. So people don't know if they get whacked by a car, the babies will still survive. So
For a time.
for hours, like
Yeah.
typically hours or maybe even longer. So I used to check, and I actually would stop on midnight, especially if it was, slower or whatever. If I saw one that got whacked, but not too bad. If they were annihilated, it was one thing. But if you could see, they got run over, and I used to check them and sometimes find something like that and save them. I take them to the emergency vet. They would usually take the.
That is fantastic.
So there's some other interesting animal stories that I can think of. I had a lady called about a snake in her toilet. This is not a setup. This isn't a setup.
Okay. All right. Oh, sure.
So I go, interesting. And I was like, "Do you use the toilet?" I was like, I looked, there's nothing there. I'm like, "Is this lady, she nuts or what?" And I'm like, "Oh, she is not nuts. I saw it. It was a whole family of rats. It was the tail." Oh. Yeah, so they must have came out of the sewer, and she never flushed that toilet. So they were able to work their way through the plumbing, and it had an entire thing. So I fished them out for it, and I took them. But what else?
Yikes.
Took them? What do you mean you took them?
And let them go. Let them, put them
You held them? Like you grabbed them?
I had glove on, and I took them out of her.
Still,
out of the,
God,
out
I
of the-
would. Ooh.
Yeah.
Rodents, they freak me out a little bit.
No, I just say it was just a I can't remember if I scooted them. It was a while ago, but I had this was a really good one. That there was a lady at a mobile home park south of here, and she comes out of the house. She's reporting something else, and she ends up she's like, "Oh, look at this!" And she was wearing like I don't know if you call it a muumuu or whatever, but she reaches into him and lifts up her breast and pulls out a couple of flying squirrels, one from under each side.
They like to feel warm and secure.
I was like, I guess it's a good place to live.
She's USA's second marsupial.
Yeah. I wouldn't have checked that one for.
Ooh. Yeah, no.
So that was
That's
interesting.
Yeah, that's weird.
I'm trying to think of another one. There was one where there was a lady who was blind, and she was so she called, and it was another mobile home. She was blind, living in there, and she had a bathroom probably as big as this table, and she goes, "There's some noise in my bathroom," and I go, "Well, that's weird. Let's see what it is." So you would never believe it. She had a vanity, probably like a 32-inch vanity sitting there, and her toilet paper. So if you could, to put it into perspective, there was so her toilet is so if you're sitting on her toilet, to her left side was the vanity. Mm-hmm. And so the sink was facing, like you'd have to stand up and you'd take a 90 degree to the left, and you'd be able to wash your hands. So her toilet paper roll was on the door. It would be the right hand swinging door, and it had a toilet paper roll mounted on the inside. So you could that's where she'd put her toilet paper. And so she said she heard something. So I look, and there was, no joke, a full-size possum living in there with a hole to the ground. Oh. And it was within a foot of her hand. It had been there for a long time. That thing was nice blind, and she was blind. Oh. So she never knew. And I looked and I couldn't catch it. I mean, it was gone. It took its travel down on through the, it made the perfect little cozy home.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm like, she never checked it. She just must have opened that thing. She probably was limited to, I mean,
Yeah.
so
Just
small,
tell
but
her she has a cat now.
I'm like,
every once in a while.
I told her, I'm like, you have a giant possum in here. And she goes, really? I go, yeah, she was very elderly too. And so I'm like, yeah, you got to call. So maintenance actually, one of her friends from the maintenance at the park came and put just screwed on a wire mesh on the bottom, crawled under it. It was gone. But I'm like, I could not believe that's what I opened there. And I see it has a full nest. Like it's like sitting there, like that inmate I talked about earlier. He's just sitting there in paper.
That is fantastic. Holy cow.
Yeah, there's some interesting ones.
There's a pig too.
Yeah, there's a pig we had to chase around for a pig and a cow. Actually, 5 goats. There was I saw.
Wait, all at once?
No, these are different. This is different times. I was just thinking about corralling
I guess that's why
animals.
Old MacDonald had a farm. So it got out and you were chasing them.
Yeah.
When you were studying veterinary medicine, would you study large animal vet?
So that was what I didn't know at the time. That's what we were doing though. It was all like it was taking care of cows, learning to use. And you did injections like saline solution in rabbits. So you could do, it was kind of like for the 5 levels, and they still have, it's a very good program. It's, I think it's hard to get into it now because it's a full-time school. But at the time you could come from all the local schools and go to it. But yeah, no, it was like you do horses, cows, rabbits. I mean, I just thought it was really cool. I figured you could do that, but yeah, that's why Super Troopers changed it all. So.
So wait, were the goat and the cow and the pig all the same
They're all
time?
different.
They were
times.
different. Okay.
There's pig. And actually I saw a
In
picture
Pinellas
recently.
County, there's that
there's
much
so many.
livestock
Yeah,
in
there's a lot of
Pinellas County?
livestock. There's a lot of livestock. Like any of the area, and there's like the western part of like unincorporated Seminole, Pinellas Park, unincorporated. That there has tons. There's you wouldn't even know how many people have farms and different things. There's one of the guys had his full bull get out. It was like I don't know if it was a bull or what cow with horns, but the thing was gigantic. And we had to like shuffle it back into his backyard from the street. But yeah, there's so many. I mean, Pinellas is, you wouldn't, for as developed as it is, I mean, the animals went somewhere.
Yeah.
Lots
Lot
of
of
critters.
Gotta be somewhere, yeah.
Coyotes everywhere.
Oh yeah, I see lots of.
I mean, you get all that. You get if you have any kind of neighborhood group, everybody points out the funny looking German shepherds that were.
This is a dog. I think it has mange or something. It's called a coyote.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get to your current assignment.
Yes.
You had a lot of, when it's perfect because you do a lot of the same stuff that you were doing before. Just
Yes.
it's all youth focused. But so tell us a little bit about what Youth Education Administrative Services does.
So youth education. So it's broke down into Youth Education Administrative Services. So they my side is youth education. So I have the SROs, all the SROs in the middle and high schools and unincorporated in our contract cities.
School resource officer.
School resource officers. Yep. And then I have the diversion program, which is Linda Cook. She's basically the single hand of Pinellas diversion. Anything that happens in Pinellas or Clearwater, we take theirs as well. So we have her, and we have all the youth programs.
So our service area and Clearwater.
Our service area and Clearwater, correct? Yeah.
Okay.
And then we have all the youth programs and the Explore program. So the cadets, the cadet program. Yeah. So the cadets are it's a very large group, and they've really done a good job building that program up to make it so these are viable people. Like, I mean, I use myself as an example to them. Like I tell them, I'll give them words of encouragement. And I really talk them into. I got a lot of them talked into going the corrections route. So instead of staying, because you can technically stay in the cadet program until
You're 21.
You're 21.
Yeah.
But I said, what? I mean, you can come back and help out with the cadets,
Right.
on nighttime or whatever. But why would you not go get, if that's what your goal is? If you want to go to,
Yeah.
if you want to go to college and whatever, that's by all means. But if you want to do that, if you want to get hired here, we pay for you to go to college.
Yeah.
You can do it that route. I said you could be like me. You could just start after high school, start getting closer. You get a retirement early. Like I can leave in 6 years or whatever, it's a really good, it's a good thing, I think, for these people. And a lot of them are taking that to heart, and we got some people going through the process now.
That's great.
Are cadets, is it only for kids that are interested in being a deputy?
So no, so that's the thing. So we try to get them set up with different pathways. So if they want to come, they can come and learn. A lot of it's law enforcement focused, but it's more of a leadership more of a leadership program for youth, and it develops life skills. And so you don't have to necessarily want to do that at all. You don't have to necessarily, you can go in the military. We have a lot of success stories that went into the military, went into private sector, or want to do civilian jobs here. And we tell them this place has tons of civilian jobs to get involved that a lot of people don't necessarily know about. So yeah, our main thing is to get good people. We want to find the bright, aspiring youth that want to do something good. And it's you get to go on ride-alongs, you get to go to jail tours, we will help you get where you want to be if you're a good person.
They get to hang out in forensics too, like
Right.
some of
They
those
get
other
to-
areas.
Everything. They can come up, they might come and talk to you guys whenever they want to too. So
Bring them on up.
Yeah.
That should
Yeah.
be a thing.
Yeah.
We should
Yeah.
talk to
I
the
think so.
cadets. Yeah.
Yeah, you should. It gives another perspective. Anybody that's willing to, and they put in a lot of work. They do a lot of training. They travel. They're traveling to California soon. They travel. They raise a lot of money, and it costs a lot of money to take these guys
Sure.
to.
They compete a lot, right?
They compete. Yeah, they compete in shooting. They compete in competitive bike riding. There's traffic stops. There's all kinds of different categories that they compete with all the state and nationals, and they take home a lot of awards. So I'm very, very proud of how the program's going and where we're at right now.
Yeah, I think it's good for anybody just to, even if you don't, just if you want something to do,
Right.
you can learn leadership and all that stuff.
And
Yeah,
besides
yeah.
all that, it's a lot of fun.
A lot of
you get to
fun.
do things that you couldn't ever do anywhere
Yeah,
else.
for sure.
Yeah.
How else would you get a chance to go ride with a cop before you're an adult? It doesn't.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's not possible. So, it's I definitely encourage people that are even considering it to come try.
So enough about the good kids.
Yes.
So here,
Yeah.
I want to talk about diversion because I think we've heard one extreme, obviously,
Right.
over the course of those evolutions over the years. But diversion, and if I remember right, we're pretty highly ranked statewide as far as successful
We
diversion.
are very successful in our diversion program. We have
Juvenile diversion
Juvenile
specifically,
diversion.
right?
Yeah, we have
Our
adult
adult
diversion
program too, but
Yes, I know.
But
But
for,
yeah.
for this side of it, for my area of responsibility, it's we have a great. We are very accommodating to try to get these people to agree to it and explain. And Linda Cook does awesome. She just really, she's been here for a long time, and she does excellent at buttoning up everything for them to be successful.
So, like, what just paint as a picture here. That obviously we know the worst for home,
Right.
and so they're dealing. These are kids that have committed misdemeanors. There are some other requirements. So, like,
Right.
what are some of the requirements to be eligible for?
Yeah, so they can't do it more than 3 total times, which we try. I mean, then we scrutinize. There's very few that do it that come to diversion for a third time, but they have to. It has to. There is some felonies that are okay, and it's at our discretion. But it's only if it's through PCSO and it's like a direct referral to us. That they say it can be an arrest, but they have to at least we contact them, see if they are. But there's like what you brought up earlier about shoplifting or criminal mischief or something that might just be over the threshold. So we're not going to take any violent felonies or anything like that. We'll take something that's maybe monetarily it makes it a felony, or if just say they trespass somewhere they shouldn't have trespassed, where it would be a misdemeanor otherwise, but just due to the location. So we have some discretion on that, but yes, you're right. Mostly misdemeanors, and these are the kids that you want to avoid any kind of record. So we don't want their fingerprints on file associated with a crime. So we want them to be able to go through normal, get to college, they make a mistake.
Don't let a mistake.
That's
right.
that's the whole point. So this is the other end of the spectrum of kids that make mistakes, or they get into a fight, or they batter somebody that they're doing juvenile stuff. That's the juvenile stuff that I agree 100% needs to be handled with, kit gloves.
Yeah.
Because that's what you don't want. You don't want somebody to ruin their life over mistakes, especially when you're a child.
Sure.
So so that's the other end of the
I
spectrum.
mean, and 40, 50 years ago, it was stuff that law enforcement wasn't even involved in.
Right.
Everybody grew up, did stupid things,
Right.
and whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And we and true, even with the schools and stuff, we have a lot of discretion in trying not to criminalize
Right.
child behavior. So the ones that you see are the extremes, and we really try to deal with a lot of stuff in school sanctions. And you get back in our day of school, you didn't get arrested for batteries and stuff like that. And so if it's very egregious, I'm sure you would.
Right.
Typical
lunchroom
fights. Yeah, they don't. The school should handle most of it. Yeah, if you
Right.
get attacked unprovoked, that's different. But 2 kids meeting to fight, that should be referrals
and that's a good segue. So the SROs that you have,
right.
It's something, I think SROs are something that people kind of forget about.
Yeah.
Just because it's not new by any means. Everybody grew up, within the last 30 years, 40 years, had some kind of law enforcement presence at school.
Yeah.
But, we have a great SRO program.
Yes.
Cover a lot of schools. And, of course, school safety is
Paramount.
It's certainly up there on Sheriff Gualtieri's list. But
yeah.
Just talk a little bit about, and we've had some folks that spent time in SRO, so I think everybody kind of generally understand, and you've had an SRO, a lot of folks, so
right.
you know what they do.
Yes.
But what does that flow look like for you as a lieutenant? Like what kind of, because you have the way it's separated, you've got 2 sergeants that cover north and south,
yes.
but what kind of issues like are elevated to you? Because it's obviously an interesting dynamic. Hey, the school should handle this, or we got to get involved and whatever. So how does that work for
so
you?
any significant activity I need to know about, and I want to make sure that my counterparts, and a lot of it's threat related. So it's kind of back to my days
right.
of threat. You
can't get away.
It's kind of you're right. It's like everything kind of the last bit just merged together into the same but different.
Mm-hmm.
But with the dynamic of I've always dealt with typically the bad kids. Now I'm dealing with most of them are good.
Right.
So it's like a whole nother. But when it gets to my level, like there's the kids giving high fives to the SRO, don't breach me. So
right.
it's the ones that are like, hey, this is concerning behavior. This is what we're having. So we're doing a lot of collaboration. I mean, we're an arm we're in a mandatory. With all the laws related
sure,
to Stone
mandatory
and Douglas.
reporters. Yeah.
But we're also mandatory to be on campus for the time. So there's no back 30 years ago the SRO could leave and go to lunch.
Mm-hmm.
These guys that can't anymore. They are there for the hours, and there's a lot of rules regarding locking doors, and they're doing a lot of drills
mm-hmm.
to make sure that their active assailant drills policies are up in place and
mm-hmm.
that they're running. So the sergeants and I'll go out there for those and. But the day-to-day for an SRO it's very different than probably it was back then.
Right.
And you got to remember that there's no nonsense. Like if it comes down to that, if it's a threat related to school, it is there's
no excuse.
No excuse. Yeah. You might have a pretty good job for most of the time, but you might have a really bad job at some point in time. So that's what you got to make sure you're prepared for
right.
as an SRO. But if it rises to my level, typically it's involving threats or unique situations at the school, and those ones. So the ones that I like sometimes, and I encourage the people if it's a Met fight and they haven't had priors, they don't need to go to diversion. They need to go and they need to be handled with school. Say, get kicked out for a couple of days, learn your lesson, and be done. We don't need to criminalize everything. And I try to I said, but you know what? If somebody's sitting there doing nothing and gets punched or beat, I'm like, that's fine. And typically that'll be a diversionary case unless they cause major harm.
Right, and that's a minority of it.
Minority of it, yeah. Most of them are typical.
Everybody's vision of how school is mostly still true, and
I agree. Yeah. Yep. It's just we take stuff that you would have been able to say and get away with back then.
Joke about.
You just can't joke about it, especially now. The main takeaway from it is words are one thing, but once you start putting things into an electronic format or a written format, it's written down, it's evidentiary, and you're likely you say you're going to shoot up the school, you're going to jail. You're going to go to PJAC, and you're likely going to be held for 21 days, whether it's your first offense or your 20th. So that's the biggest thing that we deal with. We try to we do a presentation every school year and remind everybody not to do that. Mm-hmm. Like saying, hey, nothing will be this is not taken lightly. It's part of the SRO's normal intro to school and their segment. Like, hey, this is what we don't joke about. Mm-hmm. So, but if it rises to my level, a lot of time I'm talking to threat all the time. I feel like I'm basically one of the main feeder reports for the threat system. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel like you know some people in threat too.
I feel I do. I have a connection.
So it's really cool to just listen to your pathway and just the different things you've been involved in, how it's all kind of come back around, because it's a great a balance of, we gotta take care of business.
Yep.
We also need to be empathetic. We need to be involved in the good things.
Right.
You have cadets. You also have, the target response against distracted driving. You have the teen driver challenge, which is really popular. A lot of positive things. But it's a good balance of just positive things, proactive things, and then we have to reactionary things.
Reaction. Yeah.
That's just good stuff.
Yeah. Definitely. I feel like it was it was an easier transition for me understanding because the juvenile justice system is very complex. So I feel like for somebody that would be new to this spot, it takes more learn. If you never done any of the stuff I did in the past, it would have been, everything would be new, and you'd be like trying to learn threat. It's like, oh wow, this is a lot.
You just have a lot of context.
And then had a lot of context coming in. I'm like, this is relatively straightforward.
Right.
So, and it's, you're calling threat. Like I used to be the receiving end of the threat calls, and I have to deal with doing all this stuff. And now I'm like, we've already done all this stuff.
And they probably look forward to hearing from you because at least you know what you're doing.
You know what you're looking for. Like, yes, it's everything's buttoned up, and if we need some help, I'll tell you.
Right.
So, yeah, no, I feel like it's been rewarding.
Yeah. Do you guys have anything else for him?
I do.
On that? Yeah.
So I think it would be, how are Pinellas County schools safe? Because I think the number one thing on any parent's mind that has kids in elementary school, middle, or high school is that fear, because that's what you see on the news all the time. And so can you talk a little bit about like what we have in place to help make sure that doesn't happen, or if it does, we're, ready to respond?
Yeah, so basically, a lot of it is statutorily we were doing stuff before it was statutorily mandated. So and the main thing is keeping the most access to students limited, and training every student in the district on where to go. So it's not a trick. So it's like
you're talking about building access, like limiting building access.
Yeah. So exterior, like closing gates, locking gates. Having students not being able to come and go from class with access, with unlocked doors in every path. So you find that the biggest checkpoint for people being able to get harmed in these terrible incidents is full access. So the more access that these people can have quickly, because these things are over very, very quick. So the more access you have, the more people that can get injured or killed. So we like to make it so first you don't have access. Second off, everybody's trained for if something happens, all the teachers and stuff have to practice quarterly that they have to go and practice where they're going to go. There's actually string lines up in every classroom. It's mandated. There's a colored string in every classroom and shows the deep corner, which is where they know to hide. Or there's an interior room. They put another string over that door. So I think the thing that differentiates us from a lot of places is that we are prepared. So if the warning bells go off, they have a push button. And if that goes off at all, everybody that knows what to do, and they've been practiced, which it's a sad thing. I mean, really, if you think about it, it's a sad thing that we have to. I never would have thought of practicing that in school. It wasn't even a thing. I mean, it wasn't a reality back then. Even though
when I was a kid, we got under the desk because there was going to be a nuclear bomb dropped.
That's going to help.
Yeah, so since your nuclear fallout's going to be covered by your veneer desk,
right?
But. No, I 100% though. It's like, it really is. It's a sad thing. It's a sad thing that we have to do this, but it's a necessity. It's a real necessity, because if that does happen, we have to. I mean, my SROs that work for me, they are going to respond very quickly. And some schools are very big though, and there's a couple of them. But you got to remember that they have to do these drills, and they serve a very good purpose, because first off, it limits access. And then everybody knows where to go. So there's no surprise. Button gets pushed, I know exactly where I'm going. If I'm not in a classroom, nobody should be letting them in. I mean, they should be running. They should be running away. So,
and these drills are random, correct?
Yes, they don't know about them.
Yep,
they don't know. And sometimes the offender is known, like the location's known, which that dictates if people will run or lock down or where they'd go. And the whole thing is basically we do a full evaluation on their response. So, like if you say, hey, guys in the assailant, there's an active assailant on campus, he's in the cafeteria. And I mean, the people that go to the school should know the layout. The kids should know where the cafeteria is, and they're running into the cafeteria. We know that that's like not the right thing to do.
Right.
So, but they are typically good. But a lot of times it's unknown. So when something's unknown, the practice is to lock down in place, because you don't know where if your run's the last resort, because you don't know where they are. But if you know that they're far enough away from you and you can get out to the perimeter gate and outside. So, I mean, no matter what, if something happens, it'll be very chaotic. But it's we train
between the training, the drills, and what threat does is trying to get ahead of it.
Try to get ahead of it. So we can hope that we are doing everything we can. Like we found manifestos, kill lists, all stuff that related to the school, and we take them very seriously. And hopefully, not everybody needs to go to jail or get Baker Acted or whatever, but a lot of them need some resources to make sure that their mind's not flowing down that
path. Yeah.
And I know this isn't over your section, but the Guardian program, they are over the elementary schools.
Correct.
And so, but there is leadership from our Guardian unit deputies that actually oversee and make sure they're following the exact same things.
Correct. Yeah. There's the Guardian program, and that's the middle. That's elementary school, and that's under the other lieutenant in the section. So, but yes, they have that same ability to respond and take care. They have our radios, and a lot of the private schools now also are coming on board with it. So that's a positive thing. I think everybody should get on board with hiring somebody to have
Make sure somebody in the private schools.
Yep.
Put a
Because
good
it's
go in
optional.
it.
They don't have to do do much if they don't want to. Their stuff is either a la carte or
Right.
and they really should, even if they don't implement everything, they should really look into implementing the best practices.
And the sheriff will give you a lot of the equipment.
A lot of the equipment, yeah,
So-
I think, and the training and the give you
Site
a full
assessments and
presentation,
stuff, yep.
assessments.
Everything,
yeah, get you maps, and I think there's a lot of stuff that you get that's way more beneficial to you than you should. So they should definitely inquire.
Yeah.
for
Can't stand by and got to take it seriously. And
Yep.
Yeah, and
Can't
we
be
do,
complacent.
and the sheriff really does. And
Yep.
And as far as our response, it's not just the SROs and the Guardians who are trained. Every single deputy in our
Yes.
agency goes through active assailant training,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. Just because the Guardian and the SRO are going to be the first one on scene.
Everyone else is still
Everyone
coming
else
in
is
and
coming.
knows
Yeah,
exactly
they're
what to
coming.
do.
They're going to be coming as fast as they possibly can.
Yeah.
You'll see an overwhelming response if that hopefully never happens.
And we have other things too. We have cameras in every school, right? That go
Right.
directly to the comm center, so they
Yes.
can see what's
They can
happening.
start. They
if-
can start
if an alarm
relaying
goes off,
information.
yeah.
If the alarm goes off, it directly goes to the camera system, and they can access it and start triaging from the radio side. So
Giving
that's
information.
Yeah, no, I'd say we are very well equipped. This is probably a bad place to try something in our county. So don't do it.
Yeah, don't do it. So besides maybe trying to avoid dealing with youth in any way, what do you do for fun?
Oh, I'm always outside. I've got 2 young kids, and I got one that's 4 months old and one that's 4 years old, and I think my life revolves around them. I mean, I say it's not fun, but I'm always doing renovating and remodeling stuff. I enjoy working on anything, and then playing with my kids. I mean, my kid my older son, he's all big into looking for snakes now. So I didn't fall far from the trees.
Here we go.
He wants to turn every log now. So it brings me back to a kid. I walk outside through the woods with him and try to
Find stuff.
Yeah, go
Did
find
he bring
stuff.
one home yet?
Yeah, well, he ended up getting for his first 4th birthday, he got a crested gecko.
Oh, nice.
So he ended up, I did it. So of course, I think it might have been a little bit for me too. For his birthday, but that's how I convinced his mom. But
I was going to say, how easy was that?
yeah, it took a little while.
Yeah.
Probably took from 2nd birthday to 4th.
It's all right.
I was like, he's old enough now. So he's got that. He's got a praying mantis,
Wow.
little pet praying
Oh, those are
mantis.
cool.
Yeah, and so he goes in.
How long do they live?
They live like a year.
Okay.
So he's probably about halfway through his lifespan. He's molted, and he's adulthood comes pretty quick, and they don't last long. But we catch. He's got a little fly catcher that he goes out and he goes and catches little bugs and throws them in there, and the thing just annihilates them.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm like, this is a little I said, if a praying mantis, if you ever look at those, that would be, if they were the size of a human, they'd be like the
That would be
apex
tough.
predator.
They would be, yeah.
They're
you're right.
wild. They can snatch from
Yeah.
far away. So
Yeah.
Have you seen them take out hummingbirds?
yes,
Yeah.
on the videos, those giant,
Yeah, they
like
can
a
get
giant
big
Asian
things.
mantis taking out a hummingbird is wild. They just sit there and wait.
You got to catch a hummingbird now.
Yeah. I don't know. Mine's a little small. But it was.
you did say mine, by the way, not your
Well,
son's.
hold on. If you're listening, it is his.
There it is.
So
The
yeah, I
ulterior
did a
motive.
full. I did a full bioactive setup. So I got I got the different. It's got self-watering misting
Oh,
systems.
yeah.
It does.
They're like little
I have
springtails and
springtails,
isopods in the moss.
isopods.
Yeah.
I got some little the dubio roaches or whatever for the bottom to the cleanup crew. They eat I've gotten a little overboard. Yeah.
All for him,
All
though.
for him.
All
And
for
for him to look at him and try not to drop him. So, but it's in his room at least. He likes to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So-
cool.
So yeah, but I do anything outdoors. I like working on houses, cars, and my wife would tell me I should get rid of a lot of my stuff, but I got a lot of projects.
Keep it up.
I know.
Keeps you out of trouble.
It does.
Theoretically.
It's hard. It's hard with a baby now because everything goes on the back burner.
Yeah.
But yeah, back
A few more years.
few more
out
years.
there with you. Yeah. You'll be in we'll be in the garage. See you later.
We'll all be out doing something.
That's awesome.
Working on the car with a snake around your shoulder.
Yeah.
Yeah. What? My wife drew the line on snake.
No snakes?
Not yet. That's maybe next year. So 2 years to get that thing. Maybe.
You know, there's a thing called legless lizards. That aren't technically snakes, but kind of fill the same purpose.
Yeah,
you get one of those.
No snakes, no spiders at this point.
No.
Okay.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with her on that.
Okay.
So we like to, we appreciate you coming on.
Yes.
And we like to give everybody a shot at just if there's anything, from your breadth of experience, different things, like if you had one message, for the public, what is something you want the public to know?
Okay. So I would say I want the public to know that as an agency, if you call us, I want to say that you will get the best service that you possibly can from. I will challenge that any other local agency and treat the cops right. I mean, that's call when you need to. Don't call when you don't, but expect to get a very good level of service. And I say, just call for stuff don't call for something that doesn't relate to police matters.
Right.
Because that is one of the things that I would tell everybody. I'm like, you should maybe Google what the police do sometimes.
Right.
Because there's a laundry list of things they don't. We do a lot. I mean, we do a lot of extra.
Right.
But yeah, so that's for the public. And then for the agency members that are coming up behind me, there's a very lot of talent coming up. I'm glad I'm not in the competition pool for a lot of these newer people with, doctorates and stuff coming into this. But I would say, don't ever forget where you started, and whether it's the jail or whether it's patrol. And I say and treat people fairly. That's all they want. They want to know the rules of the game. They want to know what to expect. And I don't care if that's this career or any other one. Nobody likes to be, shifted on to a different set of rules every day. So be consistent, hold people accountable to get a product that's quality to you and to the standards of the agency, but don't micromanage. Let people have that creative, thought process and make decisions.
It's a big part of growth.
That's a big part of growth. And let people fall and bump their knee and figure it out. Same as like I say, my kid, I'm like, you fall. I'm like, get up. I'm like, make sure he's not real hurt first.
Yeah.
I'm like, get up, kid. But you have to be able to make mistakes in order to grow. You have to figure things out yourself. You can't. There's not a textbook in the world that'll teach you everything that's going to go wrong. And I think that just to know that don't write off people that are under you for seeming mistakes, in which I think this agency does a great job at forgetting and forgiving with things. But if you can just strictly let people learn and then let people grow and not hammer them for every minor mistake, you'll gain a lot of a loyal following in a sense that they enjoy their job.
Yeah, it's good stuff. That's Lieutenant Matt Thornton, everybody. Laura, if people wanted to give us feedback or engage with us about the podcast, how might they go about doing that?
Well, they could email us, for one.
They could?
They could email us at lets56@pcsonet.com. That's LETS56@pcsonet.com. They can also follow us on social media.
Yeah, we've got on Instagram, just spelled out, 56 Podcasts is our handle on Instagram. You can engage with us there if you want to hear something specific, have questions for a future guest, anything like that. Please drop us a line, and thanks for listening.